The story starts with our protagonist. Luke was the eldest son of a powerful lord, and everyone expected him to get a strong combat skill. However, during his blessing ceremony, he received a weird skill called village building. Since it wasn't useful for war, his family immediately lost interest in him. On the other hand, his younger brother Rael, who was the son of a maid, got the legendary Sword Saint skill. Their father was thrilled and made Rael the new heir, while Luke was basically kicked out. Luke was sent to a dangerous, empty wasteland in the north to develop it. This was a death sentence in disguise, but Luke didn't mind because he never liked fighting anyway. Only one person followed him, a loyal maid named Milia. She was a beautiful woman who promised to stay by his side forever, though she secretly thought Luke was adorable and wanted to be close to him. Once they reached the barren land, a mysterious floating text appeared in front of Luke. It was a guide for his village building skill. He realized he could build structures instantly using village points. To test it out, he spent some points, and a wooden hut suddenly popped out of the ground. Milia was shocked but impressed. Next, Milia insisted they needed water to survive. Luke used more points, and a stone well appeared out of nowhere. He then officially added Milia as a villager, which actually increased the number of points he earned every day. The next morning, Luke used his new points to create a large farm field with perfect soil. As Milia started planting seeds, Luke realized his useless skill was actually amazing. He decided to turn this empty desert into a peaceful home where he could live a quiet life. Luke used to be a noble's son, but now he lives in a small, empty wasteland. Instead of acting like a lord, he decides to help a girl named Milia with the farming. Milia is the first person to join his village and helps him with daily chores. As they plant seeds together, Luke realizes that growing food is much harder than he ever thought. Meanwhile, a girl named Saren is in a lot of trouble at her own home. She is a powerful fighter known as the Ice Sword Princess, and was supposed to marry Luke. However, when Luke received a useless gift and was kicked out, her father tried to force her to marry Luke's mean brother, Raoul. Saren couldn't stand Raoul's personality, so she fought her way past the palace guards and ran away to find Luke. Back at the settlement, Luke's special village building gift is making things grow much faster than normal. He uses points he earns every day to build wooden walls and a watchtower to keep the place safe. Suddenly, a pack of goblins tries to climb over the walls. Luke grabs his sword to fight, but before he can do anything, ice arrows fly through the air and take down all the monsters. Saren has finally arrived at the village. Milia and Saren immediately start arguing over who is closer to Luke. To make life easier for everyone, Luke spends his saved-up points to build a proper house. This isn't a normal house. It has modern things like a kitchen with hot water and a flush toilet. The girls are shocked because they have never seen technology like this before. When it's time to sleep, a new problem starts. There is only one big bed, and neither girl wants to sleep alone or next to each other. They both insist on sleeping right next to Luke. He ends up stuck in the middle of them, feeling totally awkward and unable to get any rest. A month passes, and the village is doing great. The crops are growing so fast that they have more food than they can eat. To make sure nothing goes to waste, Saren uses her ice magic to turn their new storehouse into a giant freezer to keep the food fresh for a long time. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, "I'm loving it." I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. Everything seems to be going smoothly as their small community grows. Saren was feeling pretty proud of herself after hunting some wild boar, but Milia quickly shut her down, pointing out that Saren's cooking was actually terrible. Luke had to step in to stop their bickering before it got out of hand. Just then, Saren noticed something moving in the distance. She climbed the watchtower and saw a group of about 50 people heading toward the village. They looked completely worn out, wearing rags and moving slowly. These people were refugees who had lost their homes to war and hunger. Their leader was a man named Burlet, who was so thin he looked like a skeleton. Luke didn't think twice and invited them all in. Seeing how thirsty they were, Luke used his special village points to spawn a second well instantly. Milia cooked up the boar meat, and the starving group finally got a real meal. Because so many people joined the village at once, the village level jumped straight to level 3. This gave Luke a huge boost in points and unlocked new skills like villager appraisal and the ability to move buildings around. To make sure everyone had a place to stay, Luke used his points to build large row houses. The refugees were stunned to see buildings appearing out of thin air, realizing Luke possessed a very rare and powerful gift. The next day, Luke used his new appraisal skill to check the background of the new villagers. He found out that Burlet's brother, Barrett, was a natural-born warrior with a hidden talent for sword fighting. Even more surprising, he found several other commoners with latent magical powers. Usually, only rich nobles have these kinds of gifts, so finding this many talented people in one group was unheard of. Even his friends had impressive stats. Saren was a perfect fit for a general, and Milia had a secret oracle gift that made her a natural priest. With all this new talent, the small village was starting to look like a real power in the making. Luke has a special power called Villager Appraisal that lets him see everyone's stats. He finds out that Milia, a 21-year-old girl who really cares about the village, has a hidden gift called Oracle. This rare power allows her to give blessings and gifts to others, but she needs to be blessed at a church first. The problem is that the nearest church is too far away and costs too much money. Luke decides to tell Milia and a tough fighter girl named Saren about his secret power. Milia is happy to help, though she and Saren keep playfully fighting over who gets more of Luke's attention. A few weeks later, the village has its first harvest. Even though it's only been a month, the vegetables are massive and taste better than anything they've ever eaten. Luke uses his village points to build a big outdoor kitchen so everyone can enjoy a feast. During the party, a man named Donga arrives with 40 refugees. Donga is an old friend of Burlit, one of the farmers already living there. Luke welcomes them all, bringing the population to 97. Soon after, another 70 refugees show up. Luke's internal guide tells him that if the village hits 100 people, it will level up. Luke accepts the newcomers and the village hits level 4. This doubles the size of the village and unlocks new buildings like shops, workshops, and a church. Luke also gets a new skill that helps him detect any intruders. He spends his points to build the church right away so Milia can finally unlock her oracle gift. Inside the new church, Milia prays and successfully gains her power. Now she can grant gifts to other villagers who have hidden potential. She starts by blessing a 32-year-old man named Barrett with sword technique. Other villagers receive powers like Master Farmer for better crops, Green Magic to control the weather, and Spear Technique. The village is now a busy place with 173 people. Most of the residents are young women, and they love to tease Luke because he's a young and cute chief. Even though he's only 15, everyone in the village thinks Milia and Saren are his wives, and the two girls don't seem to mind the rumors. In the village square, Saren starts training the men in combat. Because of their new gifts, men like Barrett and a newcomer named Perun become expert fighters in no time. Even their young children have inherited these fighting skills. Luke checks the rest of the new group and finds even more people with gifts like giant strength, danger detection, and poison resistance. With so many powered-up people, the village is becoming much stronger and safer. Luke is the chief of a village that is growing fast. One of the kids there, a big 13-year-old named Noel, gets a super rare gift called Shield Holy Art. He is a kind boy and promises to use his high defense to protect Luke. Around the same time, the village priestess Milia tells all the workers that Luke is actually a savior sent by the gods. The villagers believe her and start working like crazy because they respect him so much. Luke has no clue about this savior talk, but he notices everyone is suddenly very motivated and the village is improving quickly. The village hunting team, led by a girl named Saren, is also getting much stronger and starts hunting bigger monsters. While they are busy, a group of scared refugees shows up. They explain that a mean gang of bandits is nearby, catching people to sell them. One bandit scout named Bale tries to sneak into the village to check things out. However, Luke has a new skill that works like a radar for intruders. He finds Bale hiding in the fields, and Saren uses her magic to freeze him on the spot. They throw Bale into a cell to get answers. An old lady in the village, who happens to be an expert at making people talk, scares him so much that he reveals everything. Bale explains that his bandit friends are already coming, and they have a guy who can send messages using his mind. He had already told his boss that the village was an easy target full of women and children. The bandit group, led by a huge boss with a giant axe, finally reaches the village at night. They think they are about to have an easy win and charge through the front gate, but it was a trap. Instead of a clear path, they all fall into a deep moat filled with water hidden right behind the entrance. As the bandits struggle to stay afloat, the water starts turning into ice, trapping them right where they are. The water in the moat suddenly turned into ice, trapping the bandits where they stood. Their plan was falling apart and they couldn't even move. The bandit leader, a massive guy with a huge axe, didn't care about the cold and pushed through to the shore. He went straight for Selen, a blue-haired girl who was using her ice magic to freeze the water. Selen wasn't just a magic user though, she was also amazing with sword. This rare combo of skills, known as a double gift, let her dodge the leader's heavy attacks and land several hits. While they fought, the rest of the bandits tried to scramble onto the shore. However, the villagers were ready for them. Led by a fighter named Barrett, the villagers used their own special combat skills to knock the freezing bandits right back into the water. Meanwhile, Selen finished her fight. Her ice magic had chilled the bandit leader's body so much that he couldn't move his muscles anymore. He collapsed and admitted defeat. Seeing their boss go down, the rest of the bandits gave up and were captured. Luke, the village chief, watched the whole thing from a tower. The victory was actually part of a big setup. They had captured a bandit named Bale earlier and used a scary old grandma who could see through any lie to force him into giving the bandits wrong information. With the fight over, Luke also rescued nearly 100 people the bandits had been holding captive. These people joined the village, bringing the total population to over 260. The village's magical guide then suggested something unexpected. Instead of getting rid of the bandits, Luke should turn them into villagers and put them in a special rehabilitation center to fix their behavior. Luke agreed, and this growth pushed the village to level 5. This level up gave Luke a new power called Facility Customization, which let him change the shape, color, and size of any building instantly. Luke immediately got to work improving the village. He replaced the old dirt walls with strong stone ones and upgraded his own house into a large 2-story building. He used his new power to add extra beds to the room. Up until now, he had been sharing a bed with his friends Millia and Selen, which was pretty awkward, so he was glad to finally have his own space. To make life better for everyone, Luke used his points to build a massive public bathhouse. Most people in this world had never seen anything like it, so Luke showed the facility to Burlet, the man who helped coordinate the villagers. The bathhouse had separate sections for men and women and a giant tub filled with hot water. Luke explained that everyone could use it to stay clean and relax, marking a huge step forward for the village's comfort and safety. Luke, the village chief with a facility customization gift, just finished making a public bathhouse. It was a huge hit, especially with the women. One guy tried to peek and ended up in a prison cell after the village women gave him a solid beating. The women in this village are pretty tough, and they even teased Luke so much that he had to run away. To improve the village defenses, Luke added stairs to the stone walls using his skill so people could climb up fast during an emergency. He also tried making holes in the walls to poke enemies with spears, but he realized the village was seriously low on actual weapons. To fix this, Luke used his skill on an old wooden hut. He literally pulled a wooden sword out of the wall. It was a fast way to craft, but when Saren, the leader of the hunting team, tested it with a swordsman named Barrett, the wooden sword snapped easily. It just wasn't strong enough for a real fight. Around this time, the scary village grandma brought back the first group of bandits from her rehabilitation facility. These guys looked completely broken and had zero energy left. Millia, the village priest, stepped in to guide them and give them some purpose so they wouldn't just give up on life. Luke then had a better idea for weapons. He went to the jail and used the iron bars to craft better gear. He stretched and compressed the metal into sharp blades and attached wooden handles from the hut. The new iron swords and spears were a total success. Land, a spear expert, and Barrett were so impressed they wanted to keep the weapons as treasures instead of using them. Luke had to mass-produce them just so the team would actually take them into battle. One bandit named Satin tried to use his telepathy gift to trick Luke. He pretended to be a sorry ex-noble who wanted to help the village, but Luke used his appraisal skill and saw that Satin was actually feeling rebellious. Luke didn't fall for the act and sent him straight to Grandma for some extra special training. Later that night, Luke tried to get Millia and Saren to sleep in their own new beds, but they ignored him and crowded into his bed anyway. The next day things turned serious. Saren and the hunting team didn't come back from the forest on time. Since they usually hunt almareggi, which are giant, dangerous rabbits with sharp horns, everyone started getting worried as it got dark. The hunting team, led by a girl named Saren, returned to the village with a massive catch. They brought back 2 huge orcs, which are pig-headed monsters over 2 meters tall. One of the men with a giant strength gift was even carrying a whole orc by himself. Luke was impressed by their power and decided to throw a big barbecue for everyone. Orc meat is usually a luxury for rich people, but here, the villagers got to eat their fill. The meat was incredibly delicious and way better than the stuff Luke had at his old home because it was so fresh. The village's farming was also doing great. Thanks to the Master Farmer gift, the vegetables were growing to crazy sizes. Carrots were as big as legs and cabbages were larger than people. Since it was summer, Saren used her ice magic to freeze the extra food so it wouldn't rot in the heat. Burlet, the man in charge of the refugees, asked Luke if they could bring the elderly parents they had left behind in their old villages. Luke agreed immediately, knowing they had enough food to support everyone. Some former bandits who had become very peaceful and loyal after spending time with a girl named Millia at the church volunteered to help as guards. Luke was shocked to see how much these once dangerous men had changed into helpful villagers. A few days later, the team returned with the elderly parents, leading to many happy reunions. They also brought back more refugees and a new group of bandits they had captured. The reformed bandits actually started lecturing the new prisoners, telling them how great Luke was and that they should be happy to be there. Later, 2 new men named Mac and Manta arrived at the village. Mac was an old village chief from the south, and Manta was his son. They were stunned to see massive stone walls surrounding a beautiful village in the middle of a wasteland. They told Luke that his old family, the Albals, were raising taxes to an impossible level to pay for a new war. Luke explained that he had been sent there as an exile because his family thought his gift was useless, but things clearly turned out well. Luke invited Mac and his people to move to the village, promising they would have plenty of food. Just then, Saren's team came back from another hunt with 3 more dead orcs. Mac and Manta were terrified at first, but they soon realized that this village was safer and more successful than any place they had ever seen. Luke watched as Saren dragged a massive monster called a great boa into the village. It was over 5 meters long with huge teeth. Noel, who has a special shield gift, and Goat, a man with super strength, helped her take it down. Mac and his son Manta were stunned. They had never seen such a big monster defeated so easily. They were also shocked to see how clean and rich the village looked, with its stone walls and happy people. Soon, everyone from Mac's village moved in. Luke used his special power to build a row of houses instantly, which left the newcomers speechless. As word spread about this heavenly place, more people arrived to escape the heavy taxes of the kingdom. Even the former bandits were now working for the village. Satan, a former thief with the power of telepathy, helped keep watch. However, 2 prisoners remained. One was Doriel, the former bandit boss who only respected strength. He agreed to help only if Saren, the girl who beat him, gave the orders. The other was Baal, a strange man who actually enjoyed being punished, which was too weird even for the village elders. With over 1,000 people now living there, the village reached level 6. Luke gained a new skill that allowed him to take over nearby land. He also unlocked new buildings like schools, underground tunnels, and big apartment blocks made of strong material. He even planted an orchard so everyone could have fresh fruit, which was usually a luxury. While Luke was relaxing in a large outdoor bath with Saren and Milia, a man named Dant was approaching. Dant was a local leader who worked for Luke's father. He noticed his own villages were becoming empty because everyone was running away to Luke's village. Worried and curious, Dant headed into the wasteland with his strongest warrior, Bazara, to see this mysterious city for himself. Just as Luke was enjoying the warm water, he got a mental message that the magistrate's army had arrived at the gates. Luke was the eldest son of the noble Alvil family, but everyone looked down on him. While his younger brother Raoul received a legendary sword saint gift, Luke was kicked out and sent to a dead wasteland because his family thought he was useless. A local official named Danto and his lead guard, Bazara, eventually went to the wasteland to see how Luke was doing. They expected to find him struggling in the dirt, but instead, they saw a massive city with giant stone walls that looked like a powerful fortress. Inside the walls, the place was even more shocking. Even though it was the middle of winter, the fields were full of giant, healthy crops. The roads were perfectly paved, and the villagers lived in modern apartment buildings with clean water and flush toilets. Luke met them and explained that his gift was actually called village building. This power allowed him to build structures, grow food, and create a city out of nothing in just a few months. To celebrate the visit, Luke threw a big party with lots of food and drinks. Danto and Bazara were stunned to see the villagers eating orc meat, which came from monsters that are usually very hard to kill. During the party, the villagers showed off their skills in a mock fight. Danto and Bazara realized that almost every person there had a rare combat gift. This village was actually a top-tier military force. Bazara admitted that even their own elite army would be wiped out if they ever tried to fight Luke's people. Danto realized that if the Alvil family found out about this, especially the jealous brother Raoul, they would be terrified of Luke's growth. Raoul would likely try to destroy the village before it became too powerful to handle. To protect Luke and keep the peace, Danto decided to hide the truth. He chose not to report anything about the city's true strength to the main family, keeping Luke's incredible progress a secret. Luke was a guy from another world who got kicked out of his noble family because they thought his village-building power was trash. He ended up in a wasteland, turning it into a paradise. A village official named Dant, who used to work for Luke's mean family, realized Luke was the real deal. He decided to secretly help Luke instead of Luke's arrogant brother. Luke actually heard this while hiding nearby. The next morning, Dant asked Luke for help because people in the north were starving. Luke didn't just agree to sell them food. He used his power to instantly build a long, smooth road through the wilderness to make trading easier. Soon after, a hunter named Saren came back with a big surprise. Her team had saved a group of elves from a pack of angry giant bears. The elves were led by a tall, beautiful warrior named Philia. To show her thanks, Philia gave Luke 10 bottles of super rare healing potion. The elves were amazed by the village's big apartment buildings, which were way better than anything they had seen. Luke invited the elves to try the village baths. In their culture, men and women bathed together, which was pretty awkward for Luke, but the elves didn't mind. Philia was just happy to have hot water without worrying about monsters attacking her in a river. Later at dinner, Philia went to the bathroom and let out a loud scream. She had accidentally pressed a button on the magic toilet, and it sprayed water on her. Luke explained that his special power created these washlets to keep everyone clean. Philia loved the idea so much she kept going back to the bathroom. The next morning, as the elves were getting ready to leave, Luke heard Philia making some very happy noises inside the bathroom. She was clearly having a great time with that magic toilet one last time. Luke was a young guy who had been sent away to a wasteland, but he used his special building powers to turn it into a thriving village. After helping some elves, a group of merchants arrived, led by a man named Brookley. Brookley was a successful businessman who couldn't believe such a nice village existed in the middle of nowhere. They traded supplies like seeds and clothes for the village's giant, delicious vegetable. Luke also bought cows and goats from them and put a girl named Nurlu in charge of them. Nurlu had a special gift called Animal Hearts that let her understand exactly how animals felt, and the livestock felt right at home immediately. Meanwhile, a major crisis hit the elven settlement deep in the forest. A massive group of orcs, which are giant pig-headed monsters, broke through their defenses. The elves were panicking, but their lead warrior Philia stayed cool and ordered everyone to run south. They barely escaped, but the hungry orcs chased them out of the forest and into the open fields. Without trees to hide in, the elves were in big trouble because the orcs were faster in the open. Philia hoped Luke's village could save them and sent a messenger ahead to ask for help. From his high watchtower, Luke saw the elves being chased and used his powers to pop up stone walls in the distance to slow the monsters down. Once the elves made it to the village, Luke didn't just hide behind the gates. He set a clever trap. He built 2 long stone walls that created a narrow, straight path leading right to the village entrance. The orcs were so hungry and angry that they didn't think twice and charged straight into this narrow lane, thinking they finally had the elves trapped. As the orcs packed into the tight space, Luke started moving the giant stone walls toward each other. The path got narrower and narrower by the second. The elves at the end of the road shot arrows to keep the front row of orcs from moving forward. Before the monsters could escape or break the walls, the 2 sides closed in completely, finishing off most of the horde in one go. Even though the trap worked, some orcs were still alive under the mess, so Luke told the village men to grab their spears and get ready to finish the job. Luke used his special building powers to trap the orc horde between 2 massive stone walls. He made small holes in the walls so the villagers could safely stab the orcs with spears from the other side. The plan worked perfectly, and the entire group of monsters was wiped out in one go. The elves, who were watching the whole thing, were completely shocked by how easily the village won. Saren, a skilled fighter and Luke's close friend, was impressed by his clever strategy. Just as they thought it was over, a giant monster showed up. It was the Orc King, a massive and super fast version of a normal orc. He was furious and charged straight at Luke. Luke tried to build more walls to stop him, but the monster was so strong he smashed right through them. To make things worse, Luke ran out of building points and was stuck as the monster rushed toward him. Right before the Orc King could reach Luke, 2 of his best defenders, Noel and Goat, jumped in with their heavy iron shields. They were knocked back by the monster's incredible strength but managed to slow him down. Then Doriel, a big guy who used to lead a bandit gang but is now helping the village, joined the fight with his own shield. With 3 strong guys holding the line, Saren and the others started hitting the monster with magic and arrows. The Orc King was getting tired and hurt, but he was still very dangerous. Suddenly, Luke received his daily bonus points. He quickly built a thick stone box around the monster so he couldn't move. Then he used his powers to drop a heavy stone tower right on top of the Orc King. The massive weight of the tower finished him off for good. After the battle, everyone celebrated their victory. Luke used healing potions on the injured fighters and met the leader of the elves, Leoninus, who is also the father of an elf girl named Philia. The elves were worried they would be punished for accidentally bringing the orcs to the village, but Luke was very kind. Instead of being angry, he invited all the hungry elves to a big barbecue party. The elves were amazed by how nice the village was. They loved the warm baths, soft beds, and especially the modern toilets. Since the orcs had destroyed the elf village, Luke invited all 200 of them to stay in his village for the winter. He even built new apartments for them in seconds using his power. Later, Luke visited the ruined elf settlement and decided to make things even better by building a safe underground path to connect the 2 villages. Luke is busy expanding his village using a special skill called territory raiding. He claims a new area and decides to link it to his main base by building a massive underground tunnel. He spends a lot of his saved-up points to make a staircase and a long passage that goes straight to the elf village. Philia, the elf warrior commander who is 114 years old but looks young, is completely shocked by his power. She realizes that with this tunnel, travel is now super easy, but she secretly wants the work to slow down because she's grown to love staying in Luke's comfortable village. Meanwhile, back in the main kingdom, Luke's brother Raoul is busy proving how strong he is. Raoul is the one who got the Sword Saint gift that Luke was supposed to have, which is why Luke was kicked out. Raoul enters a cage to fight several dangerous death row prisoners who used to be mercenaries. He moves so fast that the prisoners can't even see him before he ends them. He is incredibly arrogant and laughs at the rumors of a village in the wilderness, thinking Luke must have died in the cold long ago. Raoul is also annoyed because Saren, A noble girl who was supposed to marry him has run away and can't be found. He's planning to start a massive war in the spring to take over even more land. Back in the wilderness, winter arrives with heavy snow. To keep the village running, Luke uses his building powers to create a special road that automatically clears snow. This keeps the path open for merchants and new refugees who are looking for a place to stay. The village has become so high-tech and cozy that it feels like a luxury resort. It has warm beds, great food, and big public baths. Even the elven chief, Leoninus, who is over 300 years old, has become addicted to the village's modern toilets. He and his daughter Philia have actually spent so much time using the high-tech washlets that they've started having some painful bathroom issues, though they're too embarrassed to tell Luke the truth. As spring finally comes, the work to fix the original elf village is finished. Leoninus thanks Luke for all his help during the winter. However, there's a surprise. Even though their old home is ready, many of the elves have realized that living in the dangerous forest is much worse than staying in Luke's village. Leoninus tells Luke that a large group of elves actually wants to stay and live there permanently, because they can't imagine going back to a life without the comforts Luke has built. This marks a new chapter as the village continues to grow into a powerful and diverse community. The elves realized their old village was nothing compared to this new place. They had delicious food, hot baths, and comfortable beds. When the chief Leoninus tried to lead them back home, not a single person followed him. Even his daughter Philia chose to stay. Seeing he was all alone, Leoninus gave up and decided to live in the village too. Just like that, over 200 elves officially joined the community. A bit later, a group of dwarves arrived from the high mountains in the east. Usually, dwarves are known for being loud and bold, but these guys were incredibly shy and nervous. Their leader, Dran, told Luke they had been living in caves but had to flee because a terrifying monster, a giant snake-like creature, showed up and started attacking them. They were hungry and had nowhere else to go. Luke welcomed them with open arms, but there was a small issue. Since they had lived in caves for centuries, the bright sunlight made them feel uneasy and weird. To make them feel at home, Luke moved them into the underground tunnels he had recently built. The dwarves loved it because it felt just like their old home, but way cleaner and more modern. To celebrate their arrival, the village threw a big party with plenty of drinks. This is where things got crazy. As soon as the dwarves started drinking, their shy personalities completely flipped. They became loud, started shouting like gorillas, and even began throwing Luke into the air to show their excitement. The next morning, they were back to being shy and didn't remember any of the chaos. Luke quickly made a rule that they could only drink underground from now on. As the dwarves settled in, Luke checked their special skills. Most of them were naturally good at mining and making things with metal. One young girl named Donna stood out. Even though she was 11, she looked like a small 5-year-old child. She had a very rare skill for making weapons. She was very quiet and mostly watched Luke work, but one day she showed him an old stone slab with mysterious writing on it that no one could understand. Luke has a special gift for building and managing a village, and one day he and a dwarf girl named Donna find an old stone tablet. It shows a giant weapon that people can ride inside. Luke uses his magic to build a stone version of it, but when they try it out, the shaking is so bad they both get really sick. Donna tells him she wants to build these to protect her people since they've always been pushed around. Luke realizes that to keep his village safe, he needs to be strong. Soon after, Luke spots a strange rocky area that his magic map won't cover. He sends a team led by a warrior girl named Saren and an elf named Philia to check it out. They discover a hidden dungeon. Luke wants to go, but Saren tells him to stay home where it's safe. Luke doesn't listen and hides inside a massive bag carried by Goat, the team's strongest member. While they are deep inside the cave, Saren gets suspicious and starts poking the bag. Luke is really ticklish and starts laughing, so he gets caught immediately. Suddenly, a giant wolf monster attacks the group. Before the team can react, Luke uses his village points to build a huge stone wall that turns into a golem. The golem grabs the wolf and holds it still, letting Philia end the fight easily. Luke then explains that he used a special skill to make the dungeon part of his village territory, which is why his building powers work inside the cave. Luke has a special skill called Territory Seizure that lets him turn any area into part of his village. To make exploring dungeons easier, he wants to use this power to build safe zones inside them. Since his friend Saren is way too overprotective and wouldn't let him go, Luke sneaks out with Goat, a veteran fighter, to reach a nearby dungeon. Once he gets there, he successfully claims the entrance as his territory. This allows him to build facilities anywhere he stands, and he uses remote-controlled earth golems to do the fighting for him. The exploration team includes Saren, a skilled fighter, Philia, a wise elf, and Noel, a young boy who is amazing with a shield. They also have 2 guys with very helpful gifts. Marco can sense nearby danger, and Kamuru has a natural instinct for finding the right path in mazes. When they hit a fork in the road, Kamuru feels that the right path is the correct one even though it seems harder. Shortly after, Marco senses a trap. Luke sends a golem ahead, which falls into a deep pitfall trap, keeping the rest of the team safe. As they move forward, a massive minotaur with a bull's head charges at them. Instead of being afraid, the group is actually happy because they think minotaur meat is delicious. Noel uses his holy shield skills to block the monster's powerful charge, while Saren and Philia finish it off with magic. Since the meat is heavy to carry, Luke builds a small warehouse right there in the dungeon to store it, which is only possible because he turned the area into part of his village. Deep at the bottom of the dungeon master, who looks like a tiny girl with wings, is fast asleep. She is having a good dream and completely ignores the loud alarms warning her that her dungeon is being taken over. Back on the second floor, which looks like ancient stone ruins, the team is attacked by a huge swarm of vampire bats. Luke quickly builds a small house for everyone to hide in. From the safety of the windows, Saren and Philia use their magic to take down the bats one by one. During the chaos, Luke sees a small, colorful shadow watching them, but it runs away before he can get a good look. Finally, the group reaches a large double door at the end of a corridor. Inside, they find two boss minotaurs waiting for them. Luke doesn't take any chances and builds a giant golem that is even bigger than the monsters. The golem grabs both minotaurs and slams them into the ground, ending the fight in seconds. They find a fancy treasure chest, but inside is just a basic steel sword. Philia is disappointed by the cheap reward and tells Luke they should find the dungeon master to negotiate for something much better. Philia explains that every dungeon follows strict rules set by the gods. If a hero clears the dungeon but refuses the treasure, the dungeon master is forced to meet them in person. Luke finds a tiny hole in the floor with miniature stairs. It's a cheap trick by the dungeon master to keep them out since only someone tiny could fit. Luke doesn't fall for it and simply uses his building powers to create a proper staircase. They head down and find a glowing crystal called the dungeon core. If this core breaks, the dungeon and its master both die. Suddenly, a tiny fairy named Allie appears. She's the dungeon master and she's terrified they've come to kill her. Luke calms her down, promising not to break anything. Allie explains that she needs dungeon points to grow her home, which she only gets when people spend time inside the dungeon. Since her dungeon is in the middle of nowhere, she's been broke and bored for ages. Luke sees a win-win situation. He uses his powers to move the entire village closer to the dungeon entrance. He then builds a tunnel connecting the village basement directly to the dungeon. He asks Doran, the leader of the dwarves, if his people want to live there. Since dwarves love underground life, they happily agree to move in. This way, Allie gets constant points, and the dwarves get a perfect home. Allie is thrilled, though she's a bit of a character, and starts asking Luke to bring handsome guys to visit her. As time passes, the village population hits 3,000 people, pushing Luke's village skill to level 7. This unlock brings new buildings like proper shops, restaurants, and a playground. Luke builds the playground and even tests the slide himself before the local kids take over. He also gets a new skill called Villager Appraisal II. When he tests it on his loyal maid Milia, it shows way too much info, including her body measurements and her secret crush on younger guys. Luke gets super embarrassed and decides to keep the skill for emergencies only. Later, Milia leads Luke to the center of the village. The dwarves and other villagers have gathered around a large object covered with a cloth. They have a big surprise waiting for him, and Goat, the strong guy of the group, gets ready to reveal what they've been working on. Luke was sent to a wasteland a year ago after his family kicked him out, but he used his special powers to turn the empty land into a successful village. To celebrate their first anniversary, the villagers and a group of skilled dwarves built a massive stone statue of him. Milia, his loyal assistant who handles village affairs, also showed him a new book called The Legend of Lord Luke. The book was filled with exaggerated stories and heroic quotes that Luke never actually said, which made him feel really embarrassed. While Luke was worrying about the book, a huge monster called a tree dragon suddenly came out of the nearby forest. It was a massive plant creature that looked just like a dragon. Luke tried to protect the village by summoning a giant stone golem to block it, but the monster just ignored the fight and kept moving. Everyone was terrified until the dragon suddenly stopped in the middle of the village field. Neril, a girl who has the special gift of understanding animals, realized the dragon wasn't there to attack. It just loved the rich, healthy soil of the village and wanted to stay there. The dragon even gave Luke a giant, rare fruit as a gift and decided to become a peaceful part of the village. Soon after, a group of famous adventurers led by a man named Alec arrived at the gates. They had heard rumors about a town appearing in the middle of the wasteland and wanted to see it for themselves. They expected the village chief to be a tough, scary warrior, so they were completely shocked when they met Luke, who looked like a kind and normal young boy. Luke welcomed them, planning to use their skills to help the village grow even more. Luke, the village chief, checked in with his dungeon master, a fairy named Ally. The dungeon was now 5 floors deep, filled with traps and boss monsters to keep adventurers busy. Luke even had a secret tunnel from his house, leading straight to his girlfriend at the bottom level. Since the dungeon earned points based on how long people stayed inside, Luke made sure the first few floors weren't too hard so people wouldn't give up and leave early. A group of 4 adventurers soon arrived at the village gates. The team consisted of Alec the warrior, Hazina the mage, Del the scout, and Kamai the priest. They expected the village chief to be a scary, rough guy, but they were shocked to meet Luke, who looked like a polite and gentle boy. Luke didn't care about fancy noble manners and immediately invited them to check out the dungeon. The adventurers couldn't believe a dungeon existed right inside a village. Luke showed them the massive apartment buildings he built to house travelers, which were way better than any typical inn. He also mentioned that the local restaurant served rare orc and minotaur meat at low prices. The group was sold. They had never seen a village this clean or well-organized, especially one where humans lived alongside elves and dwarves. Luke then gave them a deal they couldn't refuse. He told them they could get a blessing to unlock special powers at the village church for just 1 gold coin. Usually, this cost a fortune that a normal person could never afford. Using his hidden appraisal skill, Luke saw that all 4 adventurers had secret talents that matched their jobs perfectly. He introduced them to Milia, the beautiful priest who strangely wore a maid outfit to get their powers started. Meanwhile, a government official named Danto was heading back to the village. He had been lying to his boss, Lord Raoul, claiming this village didn't exist to protect Luke. When Danto and his guard Bazara finally arrived after 6 months, they were stunned. The tiny settlement had exploded into a massive city with nearly 10,000 people. The village was now a high-tech hub with clean streets and high-rise buildings. Bazara, who knew his weapons, was floored when he saw the gear for sale. The local shop was filled with top-tier armor and swords mass-produced by dwarven blacksmith. These were items that even rich nobles would struggle to find, but here, they were being sold like everyday tools. In just half a year, Luke had turned a wasteland into the most advanced place in the land. Luke's village has changed completely in just 6 months. Now, elves and dwarves are actually living together, which is something that never happened. The village even has a shop selling elf potions and grilled minotaur meat. It turns out there's a dungeon right in the village, and Luke is actually friends with the dungeon master, which is super rare. There's even a massive training building where a girl named Hazina practices high-level fire magic. Everything is way beyond what anyone expected. The village is booming because adventurers are coming from everywhere to explore the dungeon. Ally, the dungeon master, has already expanded it to 10 floors. Luke uses a special skill to check every adventurer and give them helpful gifts for their journey. Plus, the weapons here are top quality and cheap because dwarf blacksmiths make them using materials from the dungeon. The population has already crossed 6,000 people, making it look like a small city. One day, a magistrate named Danto visits Luke with some big news. Luke's family, the Albels, finished a war in just 1 month and took over a lot of land. Luke's younger brother, Raoul, was the hero of the war and is now in charge of the old family territory. Danto warns Luke that Raoul is a coward who will see this successful village as a threat. Even though Luke just wants to build a peaceful place, his friends Miria and Saren know that Raoul will eventually try to get rid of him. Meanwhile, Saren's father, Seeds, is having a hard time. He keeps sending messengers to bring Saren back home, but every single one of them ends up quitting their job and moving to Luke's village because the food is delicious and the hot baths are amazing. Finally, he sends his son Sirius to bring her back. Sirius is a talented fighter who uses 2 swords and magic, and he's fresh off the battlefield. When Sirius arrives at the village, he is shocked. He sees massive walls, giant crops, and a huge tree that looks like a dragon. He meets Luke and Saren, but when Saren refuses to go home, Sirius decides to use force. He orders his elite soldiers to attack, thinking they can easily beat the amateur villagers. But he was totally wrong. Every single villager has a special fighting gift. In a matter of moments, Sirius's entire squad is beaten and lying on the ground. He stands there completely confused, realizing he totally underestimated how strong Luke's people really are. Sirius was in total shock because his elite squad got wrecked by a bunch of villagers. He tried to fight his sister, Saren, but she had become way too strong for him. She had been training hard in dungeons while he was just relaxing, so Sirius finally gave up and dropped his sword. Just then, Luke ordered his people to heal everyone, including their enemies. A beautiful elf named Philia came over to help Sirius. He had never seen an elf before and was so stunned by her beauty that his face turned bright red and he fainted. He eventually sent a short note home saying he wouldn't be coming back because he had fallen in love. Back at the capital, Raoul was getting more and more angry. He heard rumors that Luke was building a massive city, but no one he sent to check ever came back. He sent a secret team to investigate, and they were blown away by the huge walls and great roads Luke had built. But suddenly, the ground vanished and the whole team fell into a trap. They found themselves in a moving jail cell underground. A scary old lady named Nema showed up and started questioning them with a creepy smile, making the experienced soldiers shake with fear. Raoul's next plan was to send a young guy named Rain to sneak in as a merchant. Rain was a total amateur and was terrified of getting caught. The second he entered the city, Luke walked right up to him and introduced himself. Rain thought he was done for. Luke took him to a mansion for questioning, and when Rain saw the scary old lady Nema, he got so scared that he spilled all the secrets about Raoul's plan. Instead of ending him, Luke sent Rain to live in a new building with the other people they had captured. Rain was terrified of what came next, but he was at least glad to be alive. Rain entered the building, shaking with fear because she expected the worst. But instead of a torture room, she found a clean place and met a guy named Hans. He was an investigator who got caught earlier, but he looked totally healthy and happy. Hans explained that life in the village was actually great, with good food and easy work. He told her that Lord Luke was a kind leader, unlike the mean Lord Raoul. Rain soon realized this village was like a paradise and started enjoying her life there. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. Meanwhile, Raoul was getting more and more angry. None of his spies were returning from the wasteland. He found out that Luke had built a massive city with 10,000 people in less than 2 years. Feeling threatened, Raoul lied to everyone, saying Luke was planning a rebellion. He gathered 5,000 soldiers to crush the village. When Magistrate Danto heard about the army, he immediately took his family and ran to Luke's village to warn him. Luke couldn't understand why Raoul was so obsessed with him. While some people were scared and wanted to surrender, Luke stayed calm. Just then, his village reached level 8 because the population grew so much. He got a huge point bonus and a new skill to make his villagers even stronger. That night, Raoul's army camped near the wasteland. Out of nowhere, Luke appeared right in the middle of the camp to talk to Raoul. He told Raoul that he had no interest in the family's power or the throne. Raoul didn't listen and tried to have him arrested, but Luke vanished instantly using a secret tunnel he had built. The next morning, Raoul's soldiers were nervous. They had heard stories about Luke's powers and didn't really want to fight. Raoul didn't care and pushed them forward, wanting to see Luke suffer. But when they finally reached the wasteland, Raoul and his army stopped in their tracks. They saw something so big and unexpected that even Raoul was left speechless. Luke had used his new level-up powers to finish a massive project that changed the whole landscape. Luke used his village building gift to create massive stone walls that were 10 meters high and 5 meters thick. He didn't just build a simple wall. He turned the entire area into a giant maze to protect the village from an incoming army of 5,000 soldiers. His friends, like the former noble Saren and her brother Sirius, were completely shocked. They felt like Luke's power was basically a cheat code. Even Milia, a girl who always supported Luke, was excited to see such a huge project finished in no time. Soon, an army led by Raoul arrived at the wilderness. Raoul was Luke's brother and a strong fighter who had the Sword Saint gift. He was confused because these massive walls weren't there the day before, but he was too proud to turn back. He ordered his 5,000 soldiers to charge straight into the maze, thinking they could just crush everything with numbers. Once the army was inside, the nightmare started. Luke could actually move the walls of the maze in real time. Every time a group of soldiers went into a dead end, Luke would shift the walls and trap them. Raoul's army started to shrink fast as units of 500 men were cut off and locked away one by one. Raoul was getting frustrated and scared, especially when he heard strange rumbling sounds of the walls moving around him. By the time Raoul finally reached the village gate, he only had about 1,000 men left. Luke was waiting there with just 200 people. Raoul thought he still had the advantage and ordered a full charge. But as they rushed forward, Luke used his power to make the ground under them vanish, turning it into a deep water moat. Raoul and his men fell into the water, and just as they started swimming, Luke made the water disappear. The soldiers were slammed to the bottom, leaving them hurt and confused. While they were stuck at the bottom of the moat, a group of elven archers led by a girl named Philia appeared. They started shooting arrows down at the trapped soldiers. Raoul managed to use his sword skills to block the arrows and climbed out of the moat with his remaining 300 elite men. He was ready for a final fight, but then a massive tree dragon, a 30-meter monster made of wood and leaves, crashed into his army. The monster was so strong that it tossed the soldiers around easily. Raoul realized that Luke wasn't just a builder, but someone who could control monsters too. With his army falling apart and only 100 men left, Raoul decided to ignore the dragon and made one last desperate charge straight at Luke to end the fight. Raoul charged forward with everything he had, but a young guy named Noel stood in his way. Noel might have looked young, but he was a powerhouse with a massive shield and a special shield technique. Raoul thought he could just cut through, but Noel hit him with a shield bash so hard that Raoul went flying across the dirt. Raoul's soldiers were shocked. They only followed him because they thought he was the strongest, and seeing him get tossed like a toy killed their spirit. Luke, the village leader, saw his chance. He used a special skill called Villager Enhancement, which basically gave all his people a massive power boost for a few minutes. Even though Raoul's men were trained soldiers, they were no match for Luke's buffed-up villagers. It was a total beatdown. A blue-haired girl named Saren, who knew Raoul from before, walked up and told him to just give up because there was no way he could win now. Raoul wouldn't listen. He lost his mind and started glowing with a strange light rushing straight for Luke. Noel tried to block him again, but this time Raoul was moving with crazy speed and managed to push Noel aside. Just as Raoul was about to reach Luke, Luke used his building powers to instantly pop up a massive stone wall. Raoul slammed into it at full speed, making the whole ground shake. Before Raoul could even get back up, Luke turned that wall into a giant golem. The golem swung a massive fist and ended the fight right there, knocking Raoul out cold. While the villagers started cleaning up, a man named Seeds showed up with 500 soldiers. He was actually Luke's father and a local lord. He was a selfish guy who originally came to help Raoul because he thought Luke would lose. But when he saw the giant walls and realized Luke had won, he quickly changed his story. He acted like he had rushed there to save his children, pretending he was a hero all along. Instead of being cruel to the soldiers who lost, Luke had his healers and the local elves fix their injury. The enemy soldiers couldn't believe it. They had never seen someone so powerful be so kind. Luke didn't stop there. He used his powers to build huge 5-story apartment buildings on the spot so the surrendering soldiers would have a place to sleep. Looking at the massive city and Luke's incredible power, the soldiers started thinking that Luke was the one who actually deserved to be their leader. Luke was secretly excited to see how the enemy soldiers would react to the new apartments he built. He knew that once they saw how comfortable the village was, they wouldn't want to leave. As the soldiers walked into the buildings, they were totally shocked. They saw hot water coming out of pipes and realized they could take a bath whenever they wanted. Every room had its own kitchen and toilet. The beds were so soft that the soldiers started falling asleep almost instantly. They were completely sold on the place in just one night. In another part of the battlefield, a knight named Pell was stuck behind giant walls with his unit. He felt helpless until a mysterious voice spoke directly into his mind. The voice told him that the war was over because their commander, Raoul, had already been captured. Pell tried to act tough, but the voice pointed out that they were trapped and would eventually starve. Seeing no other way out, Pell ordered his men to surrender. To his surprise, the soldiers were actually happy to stop fighting. As the walls moved aside, they walked into a massive modern city. There they found their fellow soldiers having a huge barbecue. The meat and vegetables smelled so good that Pell couldn't help but drool. His old friends explained that Luke, the village leader, had prepared this feast for them because he knew they were hungry from the long march. To understand why this was happening, you have to look at the history between the two brothers. Raoul was the son of a maid and always felt like he was in the shadow of Luke, the official heir. But everything changed during their power ceremony. Luke received a gift called Village Building, which everyone thought was useless, while Raoul got the legendary sword Saint Power. Because of this, Luke was kicked out and Raoul became the new favorite. However, when Raoul heard that Luke had built a massive city in the middle of nowhere, he got scared of losing his position. He led 5,000 men to attack Luke, but he was totally outmatched. Luke used his powers to create a giant stone golem that knocked Raoul out. Raoul woke up in a clean prison cell, hoping it was all a bad dream. Luke showed up and offered him a high-quality steak. Raoul tried to stay angry, but the food was so delicious he ended up eating everything on the plate. Luke then made a smart deal. He told Raoul to go back home and tell everyone they fought a dragon instead of each other. This way, Raoul could keep his reputation as a hero, and Luke could keep living in peace. Raoul realized that Luke didn't even want the family title anymore. He was happy just being a village chief. When it was finally time for the army to leave, the soldiers were actually sad. They had spent a few days enjoying hot baths and amazing food. Raoul had to force them to move out because his men were already wishing they could stay in Luke's village forever. As they walked away, the soldiers felt like their vacation was over and they were heading back to a much worse life. Raoul and his army finally decide to head back to the capital. Luke uses his special building skills to erase the massive walls he created, which completely shocks Raoul. Before Raoul leaves, he shouts that he's never coming back, which is fine with Luke since it means no more fighting. Milia, Luke's loyal assistant, comes over to congratulate him on handling the situation so smoothly. Suddenly, Lord Basrata shows up. He is the father of Saren and Sirius, two of Luke's companions. Instead of being angry, he is actually super impressed by the city Luke built in the middle of the wasteland. He leaves quickly to take care of his own lands, but tells Luke to keep looking after his kids. Saren and Sirius seem a bit annoyed by their dad's sudden change of heart, but Luke is just happy they can officially stay in the village. After the army leaves, Luke checks the new apartment buildings and finds 30 soldiers hiding in the closets. They aren't there to fight. They just love the village life so much they don't want to go back to the harsh military. Luke tells them they can stay as long as they let their families know. Even the former local leader, Dant, decides to stay and help Luke since he can't go back to his old job after siding against Raoul. Meanwhile, Luke's father, Marquis Edel, is becoming way too powerful. He just finished off his main rivals and took over their land. When the king sends a messenger to offer him a higher title to keep him happy, Edel gets insulted. He tells the messenger the king is weak and basically declares that he's going to take over the whole kingdom soon. Back at the village, things are booming. In just 1 month, the population jumps to 15,000 people. Everyone is talking about how great the food, the baths, and the houses are. A new magistrate named Michel is sent by the government to manage the area. Michel is a very relaxed and smart guy who worked his way up from a poor family. Michel visits the village and is blown away by how clean and organized everything is. He meets with Luke and Dant to discuss the future. Instead of trying to force the village to follow government rules, Michel drops a huge shocker. He asks Luke to let the entire northern district join the village. He wants Luke to be the boss of the whole region because the village is doing a much better job than the actual government. Michel, the new leader of the North, was totally shocked by how strong Luke's city had become. She asked Luke if he could help fix up Rieson, the biggest city in the area. Luke agreed because his special village powers now covered the entire district. He started by building a special stone road that connected his village to the city. This road was magic because it made anyone walking on it move super fast without getting tired. Luke and Michel basically zoomed across the land and reached the city in no time. When they arrived at Rieson, Luke used his powers to register all the residents as his villagers. Instead of breaking down the old buildings, he used his skills to instantly fix them up. He made the walls clean, fixed the leaks, and added things like better security and fresh air. He even turned empty houses into clean public toilets and big bathhouses. A local office worker came home and couldn't believe his eyes. His old house looked brand new, the air felt like a forest, and the streets were suddenly perfect. Luke then moved on to the farms. He upgraded the fields so crops would grow faster and better, and he even added a feature to keep bugs away. The old farmers were jumping with joy because they could move around like young men and do their work easily. After helping so many people, Luke's village reached level 9 because he now had over 30,000 villagers. He got a massive point bonus and unlocked new things like big refrigerators, art museums, office buildings, and even a dam to stop floods. He also got a cool new skill that let him pick up buildings and move them through the air. Right as he was finishing, a local village chief came to him, begging for help because their homes were always being ruined by a flooding river. Luke is a young noble who was sent to develop a wasteland. He has a special gift from his past life that lets him build structures instantly using points. One day, a village chief tells him how the local river always floods and kills people. Luke's assistant, Michel, thinks a big project is impossible because they don't have the money, but Luke tells her not to worry. He uses his points to build a massive, high-tech bridge and a giant dam in a split second. The village chief is so shocked and happy that he starts treating Luke like a god. While they are checking the new dam, a giant 3-meter bear called a blood grizzly jumps out of the woods to attack. The guards are terrified and tell Luke to run, but he just walks toward it. He uses his power to build a stone wall right as the bear leaps. Then, he turns the wall into a giant golem that punches the bear until it runs away. After saving the day, Luke finishes building roads and houses for the whole district, making life much easier for everyone. When summer hits, the heat becomes too much for the people working outside. Luke decides to build a huge, lazy river pool that cleans itself automatically. He even uses his magic workshop to create modern swimsuits for his friends. When they go to test the pool, things get chaotic because Philia, an elf girl, shows up totally naked. She says that's just how elves swim, but the sight is so shocking that a guy named Sirius gets a massive nosebleed and almost faints. Luke has to give him a potion to save him and forces Philia to put on a swimsuit, so she doesn't cause any more accidents. To keep the fun going, Luke introduces a game called Watermelon Splitting. His friend Saren, who is a great fighter, uses her swords to perfectly slice a watermelon while blindfolded. Philia does the same thing but uses a bow and arrow from 50 meters away. Other strong guys in the village join in, like a spear user named Lando and a karate expert named Goat, who use their skills to smash the fruit in cool ways. It becomes such a hit that the whole village starts doing it every summer. Later, a villager named Burlet comes to visit with his wife and their new baby boy. He tells Luke that the birth was very easy and painless thanks to the magic clinic Luke built. Burlet is so grateful for everything Luke has done that he asks him to name the baby. Luke realizes this is a huge responsibility and starts thinking of the perfect name for the boy. Luke felt the pressure as the Burlet family stared at him with hopeful eyes. He quickly came up with the name Belk for their new baby, which was just a mix of the father's name and his own. The parents were thrilled, but this started a huge trend. Since the village was doing so well, many couples were having kids, and soon everyone was lining up to have Luke name their children. Some couples eventually came to Luke with a special request. They wanted a private place to spend time together away from their kids. Luke used his powers to build a hidden underground hotel. This wasn't just a normal building. It had special features that made people feel more energetic and romantic. He even built a bar district leading to the entrance so people could visit the hotel secretly without being noticed by others. Miria, Luke's loyal maid, heard the village women talking about how amazing this hotel was. She started acting very strange and chased Luke down. Using a special high-speed move she called maid breathing, she snatched Luke up and carried him toward the underground hotel. She seemed determined to take him inside, but a staff member blocked the door. Since Luke was only 13, he wasn't allowed in, and Miria's plan failed immediately. The next day, Luke visited the farm area managed by a girl named Nell, who has a special gift for understanding animals. Thanks to the high-tech sheds Luke built, the animals had grown to a massive size. The cows were as big as houses and the chickens looked like giant monsters. Even though they were huge, they were very calm and provided a massive supply of milk and eggs for the entire village. Luke also checked on the tree dragon, a massive creature that looks like a tree. It had started producing babies that looked like small plants but could walk and move their branches. These little creatures were a bit too playful and tried to wrap themselves around Luke like ropes, but the parent dragon stepped in to keep them under control. An adventurer named Alec watched all of this growth with surprise. He remembered when this place was just a wasteland, but now it felt like a booming city. Luke had even started the first-ever Adventurers Guild. This system allowed fighters to earn money by selling monster parts and completing jobs. Every adventurer was now given a rank from E to A based on their skills, making the village the perfect hub for anyone looking for work and better gear. The A-rank party known as Guren is currently the talk of the town for constantly breaking dungeon records. The group is led by Alec, a 38-year-old veteran who finally feels like he's making it big after getting a special gift. His team includes Hazina, a popular 18-year-old girl, Dill the Scout, and Guy the Healer. They also hire a local villager named Kamuru, who has a special ability to navigate the maze perfectly. Kamuru is the same age as Alec and seems to have a crush on Hazina, though Alec thinks he has no chance. The dungeon is growing fast, adding new floors constantly. The first 5 floors are basic caves filled with goblins and kobolds. The team takes down the floor boss, an elder kobold, with 1 hit. In the next section, floors 6 to 10 are filled with forest plants and giant insects. After that, floors 11 to 15 turn into stone ruins where minotaurs live. The team takes down a black minotaur and sends the valuable meat back to the surface using a convenient transport service found in the dungeon's safe zone. As they go deeper, the environment changes to ice on floors 16 to 20. They easily deal with a pack of yetis using fire magic. On the undead-themed floors that follow, they defeat a powerful wight to get a high-priced staff. To survive the lava-filled floors from 26 to 30, they use special cooling potions made by the village alchemist. These potions make their bodies so cold that the heat doesn't bother them at all. While the adventurers explore, the village chief Luke meets with the dungeon master, a fairy named Ally. The dungeon grows by using points earned from visitors and residents. Luke helps Ally design new floors, treating it like a fun project. They plan to add a dark area and an underwater section filled with crab monsters. Luke wants to make sure the dungeon stays interesting and profitable for the village. Word about this amazing village spreads, reaching an adventurer named Geese. He doesn't believe the stories about a perfect city in the middle of nowhere, but he decides to check it out. When he arrives, he is shocked to see massive walls and top-tier facilities. He visits the training ground and spars with a local man who acts very humble. Geese is a trained swordsman, but he barely manages to keep up with the man. To his shock, the man reveals he isn't even an adventurer. He's just a regular farmer who uses the village training center. Later, Luke visits the public bath and notices something strange. Every single villager has become incredibly muscular. Their chests and arms are huge, looking like professional bodybuilders. Even though the villagers try to act like nothing is different, it's clear that the village's training facilities are turning everyone into super strong humans. Luke noticed that everyone in the village was suddenly getting super buff. Even regular workers like Burlet, who didn't need strength for their jobs, were now ripped. Burlet explained that the training ground Luke built had a special feature that made muscles grow way faster than normal. Even regular villagers were now strong enough to fight like professional adventurers. Luke was tired of being called cute and wanted to look cool, so he decided to train too. However, the muscular villagers, led by the village priest Milia, blocked his way. They loved his current look so much that they formed a physical wall of muscle to keep him away from the gym. Milia and her followers were determined to protect Luke's small physique at any cost. Next, Luke built a school to give the village kids a proper education. Milia volunteered to be a teacher, secretly planning to make sure the children grew up totally devoted to Luke. Along with the school, Luke added a library and an art museum to keep the village's culture alive, especially since many valuable items were being lost in the outside world due to constant fighting. A group of women led by a lady named Fauna soon arrived. They used to work as prostitutes and wanted to start a similar business in the village. Luke realized he had some unfair ideas about their work and decided to build them a safe, clean place to stay and work. When Fauna tried to flirt with Luke, she saw Milia's scary smile in the background and ran away in total fear. In a nearby town, a young healer named Muon was struggling because his magic was very weak. But after he moved into a new clinic built by Luke, his healing powers suddenly became much stronger. He even saved a guard who was nearly finished off by a monster by using a special potion he found in the clinic. When Muon visited Luke's village to investigate, he was shocked to find that these rare, life-saving potions were being sold like regular groceries. Leoninus, the leader of the elves living in the village, explained how this was possible. The village fields were so magical that rare herbs grew easily, allowing the elves to mass-produce potions that usually took years to make. While experimenting, the elves accidentally created a legendary elixir. They tested it on a mouse that had lost its tail, and the tail grew back instantly. Knowing that kings and nobles would start wars to get their hands on this miracle medicine, Luke decided to keep the elixir a total secret. Leoninus also showed off other new inventions, like potions that could make a person 10 times stronger or 10 times smarter for a short time. To prove it, the old elf drank a strength potion and cracked the ground with a single punch, showing that the village's technology was becoming incredibly powerful. Leoninus, the elf chief, wasn't usually known for his brains, but lately he had become a genius at making potions. He showed Luke a new drink that boosts a person's stamina 10 times over. He was especially hyped because it was helping the elves have more babies. Even his own wife got pregnant for the first time in 50 years. He had already created over 30 types of potions, including ones that hide your scent or make your body super flexible. Luke was impressed but told him to slow down before things got too crazy. Then there's Doran, a dwarf who is finally enjoying life. Before moving to the village, his people lived in dark caves eating snakes and bugs. Now Luke has given them a comfortable underground home where they have plenty of good food and unlimited alcohol. In return, the dwarves do all the heavy lifting and blacksmithing. They make weapons so good and cheap that visiting adventurers can't believe their eyes, as the same gear would cost 5 times more in the capital. One day, Doran called Luke to the workshop to see a young dwarf girl named Donna. Even though she's only 12, she has a special gift for making incredible weapons. She had already invented things like swords that turn into whips and prosthetic arms that move like real ones. This time, she showed off a sword that shot a massive bolt of lightning when she swung it. It was a legendary magic sword, a type of weapon that was thought to be lost to history. Luke knew they had to keep this a secret to avoid attracting unwanted attention from the outside world. Donna didn't stop there, though. She showed Luke a shield that reflects any attack back at the enemy, and a bow that fires arrows that automatically track their target. She even made tiny golem soldiers that run at enemies and blow up. When she showed him a metal tube that could fire rapid shots like a machine gun, Luke started to get a headache. He realized her inventions were moving way too fast for this world, and asked her to please hold back a little. Meanwhile, the village was running low on meat because they had been hunting too many orcs. To fix this, an elite team led by a girl named Saren headed toward the eastern mountain. The group included Philia, a talented elven archer, and her brother Sirius, who also uses magic. Thanks to the high-speed roads Luke had built, they reached the mountains in just an hour. They were looking for a new food source and soon found exactly what they needed. They ran into a monster called a cockatrice, which looks like a giant 4-meter chicken with a snake for a tail. These birds are very dangerous because their spit can turn anyone into stone instantly. However, the hunting team was too well coordinated. A girl named Noelle used her massive shield to block the birds' kicks and beak attacks. When the monster tried to breathe out a petrifying mist, Philia and Sirius combined their wind magic to blow the danger away. They easily took down 10 of these giant birds and headed home. When they returned to the village, Luke was shocked to see the size of the chickens they had caught. The team treated these legendary monsters like simple groceries because they were so much stronger than before. As they unpacked, Luke noticed Sirius turning bright red because Philia mentioned how well they worked together. Luke just laughed and told him to finally admit his feelings, ending the day on a light note. The village was doing better than ever. While Philia still didn't realize how much Sirius liked her, everyone else could see it. To celebrate a successful hunt, the village threw a massive chicken festival using meat from a monster called a cockatrice. Since many new chefs with special cooking powers had moved in, the food was incredible. They were serving everything from ramen to fried chicken, and the taste was so good that tourists were starting to visit just for the meal. While the village was partying, a nearby leader named Viscount Doltz was in big trouble. He was losing a long war against his rival, Viscount Franco. Doltz tried to call his soldiers to fight, but he found out his villages were empty. Over 50 villages had vanished because the people had all moved to Luke's thriving city. With his army gone and the enemy closing in, Dolce had no choice but to run away. He decided to head straight for the same wilderness city his people had fled to. When Dolce arrived, he was shocked. The village he heard about was now a massive city with giant walls and amazing technology. He planned to hide there and find a way to take his land back, but the city was so distracting that he almost forgot his mission. The food was too delicious, and the entertainment was too good. He and his men spent their days eating and watching plays instead of planning a war. Eventually, Dolce tried to start trouble by spreading lies to make the residents angry at the enemy army. However, Luke's guards caught him immediately. They sent Dolce and his men to a rehabilitation facility, a special building that fixes a person's personality. A month later, Dolce came out as a completely different man. He was crying and apologizing for being a selfish leader. He truly wanted to save his people now, not for pride, but because it was the right thing to do. Dolce asked Luke for help to take back his home from the mean Viscount Franco. Luke agreed and used his building powers to create a giant underground tunnel. This tunnel went all the way to the enemy's capital city. What usually took 2 days to walk only took 2 hours through the tunnel. Using a teammate's telepathy power, they tracked exactly where Franco was hiding inside his castle. While the village's elite fighters, led by a girl named Saren, prepared to pop out of the ground for a surprise attack, things were messy inside the castle. Franco's general, Rudolph, was frustrated because his boss was being lazy. Instead of securing the city, Franco was just partying and ignoring his duties. He had no idea that Luke's team was already inside the walls, ready to end his rule and take the city back. Luke had been helping Viscount Dolce rebuild his strength after losing his land to Viscount Franco. While Franco's man, Rudolph, was watching the castle, he noticed something strange. Mysterious stairs appeared in the garden and an elite group of fighters rushed out. These weren't regular soldiers. They had crazy powers like ice magic and super speed. One archer even shot an arrow that hit the wall like a falling meteor. Rudolph realized this was a surprise attack they couldn't stop. Inside the castle, Viscount Franco was busy drinking and being a bully to a young girl. He was sure he had won, but a panicked guard rushed in to say the enemy was already inside. Before Franco could even react, Dolce walked right into his bedroom. Franco was terrified and immediately did a giant apology jump, begging for mercy. Surprisingly, the two former enemies started talking and realized they actually got along well. They both decided to stop the war and asked Luke to help make their lands better. Luke accepted and added both territories to his special village. This caused the population to explode to over 100,000 people, which pushed the village to level 10. With this level up, Luke unlocked new buildings like hospitals, theaters, and even tall apartment towers. He also got a cool new skill called Body Double, which lets him create clones of himself that can think and talk. Luke started using these clones to handle work in different places. However, things got a bit messy when the villagers couldn't tell the difference between the real Luke and the clone. One day, Luke shifted his mind into one of his doubles to see what it was doing. He instantly got a shock because the clone was sitting in the women's bathhouse. The village ladies had invited the clone in, and it didn't know how to say no. Realizing he was in a very awkward spot, Luke quickly pulled his mind out and made the clone run away. Luke, who started a new life in this world with special building powers, was busy managing his fast-growing village. Because so many babies were being born, he used his points to build a high-tech hospital. This place used magic and modern medicine to make sure mothers could give birth without any pain or trouble. One day, a former bandit-turned-guard named Bale came running with crazy news. An old lady over 60 was pregnant. It turned out she and her nearly 70-year-old husband used a special elf potion to make it happen. This news went viral in the village, and soon all the other elderly couples were trying to have babies too. As the village kept growing, an advisor named Danto suggested that Luke needed a home that matched his status. Luke used his points to upgrade his mansion, but the result was shocking. Instead of a stone castle, a massive 30-story skyscraper appeared. It was 100 meters tall, shining white, and filled with modern things like elevators. The top floor was a luxury suite with a pool and a great view of the whole area. Luke worried that his house now looked way more impressive than the king's own palace. While the village was doing great, the royal palace was in a total mess. A powerful man named Marquis Albil had challenged the king, and the nobles were terrified. Many of the king's supporters were being taken out one by one in the dark. To keep their power, the corrupt officials wanted Princess Darania to marry the Marquis. King Darius XIII hated this idea, but he had very little power to stop them. The king decided to send his daughter on a secret mission to the Marquis's territory to find a way to fix the situation. Princess Darania and her loyal guard, Marisha, disguised themselves as poor sisters named Ria and Risha. They left the palace in secret and started a long, dangerous walk toward the enemy's land, hoping to save their kingdom before it was too late. Princess Darania and her guard Marisha reached the city of Risen and couldn't believe their eyes. The place was spotless and the people looked healthy, which was the opposite of the dirty royal capital. They met Mitchell, the city's magistrate, who revealed a big secret. He wasn't just an official. He was a spy who had been working for Darania's father, the king, for 10 years. Mitchell led them further north into a wasteland that had been transformed into a giant, high-tech city. This was the work of Luke, the son of Marquis Alvil. Luke had been kicked out by his family but used his special building skills to create this massive place. When Darania finally met Luke, he was worried she was there to complain about his giant palace. Instead, she asked him for a massive favor. She wanted his help to stop his father, the Marquis, from taking over the whole country. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, Marquis Alvil was acting like the new boss. He planned to marry Darania to officially control the kingdom, but King Darius dropped a truth bomb. He told the Marquis that his useless son Luke had built a city more powerful than the capital and that Darania was hiding there. The Marquis didn't believe it at first, but his scouts confirmed the city was real and packed with people. He also realized his other son, Raoul, had been keeping this a secret from him the whole time. Furious that he had been played, the Marquis ordered Luke to hand over the princess. However, Mitchell had already set things in motion to force a confrontation. Luke sent a letter back refusing the order, basically picking a fight. Now the Marquis is heading back to his land with his army, determined to destroy the city and take what he wants by force. Luke was once an ordinary guy who got a second chance at life in a fantasy world. He was born into the noble Albal family, but was kicked out by his father, Marquis Albal, because his building gift seemed useless for war. Luke didn't mind and started his own peaceful village, which grew into a massive city. The conflict started because Marquis Albal and Luke had totally different ideas. Albal only cared about power and war, while Luke just wanted everyone to live a good life. Albal sent a message asking for a meeting at his castle, acting like he was doing Luke a favor. Luke went there, but he knew his father couldn't be trusted. During the meeting, Albal was very pushy. He told Luke to hand over Princess Saren and use his building powers to make fortresses for the army. Luke asked what Albal would do if he ruled the country. Albal proudly said he would force everyone into the army and attack all the neighboring lands. Luke told him that was a terrible idea and that a ruler's job is to make people's lives better, not sacrifice them for land. Albal got so angry that he pulled out his sword and finished off Luke right there, or so he thought. Luke's body suddenly turned into sand and crumbled. It was just a fake body double. The real Luke was safe at his village, and he had just officially declared war on his father. Albal didn't waste any time. He gathered a massive army of 20,000 soldiers. He even brought along 3 of his 4 generals. These are the strongest warriors in the land who have won countless battles. One of them, a smart strategist named Neon, stayed behind to guard the royal capital. Albal also brought his other son, Raoul, though he treated him poorly because Raoul had lost to Luke before. While Albal's army was marching toward the wasteland where Luke's village was supposed to be, Luke was busy with a crazy plan. Instead of building walls to hide, he used his special skill to move the entire village. The houses, the shops, and the massive walls all started sliding across the ground. Princess Saren couldn't believe her eyes, but for the villagers, seeing buildings move was just a normal Tuesday. Luke didn't just move the village to hide. He moved it straight to the royal capital. Back at the capital, General Neon was trying to keep things under control. Suddenly, his soldiers started panicking. Neon looked out from the palace tower and saw a giant high-tech city parking itself right next to the capital's walls. It was moving so fast it didn't seem real. Neon was a genius strategist, but this was way out of his league. His brain literally stopped working from the shock, and he started making weird noises as his pride crumbled. With the capital in a panic, Luke's villagers jumped over the walls and took control of the city. They used secret underground tunnels to sneak into the palace and quickly ended the fight. They rescued the king, who was Princess Saren's father. The king turned out to be a very kind man who was tired of Albal's bullying. When he looked out the window and saw Luke's city sitting there, he almost fainted. Meanwhile, Albal finally reached the wasteland with his 20,000 men. He was ready for a bloody battle, but there was nothing there. The entire city had vanished. All he found was a big stone monument with a note from Luke saying, "We moved to the capital for a bit." Albal was losing his mind with rage. Just then, a messenger rushed in with the worst news possible. The royal capital had been taken over in a single day, and General Neon had been captured. Albal realized he had been played, and his plan to rule the kingdom was falling apart. Albal's army was heading back to the capital to take it back, but the trip was a total nightmare. Every single night, mysterious soldiers would pop out of nowhere, burn their food and weapons, and then just vanish. The soldiers couldn't get any rest because of the constant alarm. Many got tired and just quit. Albel was stressed, but he refused to slow down because he didn't want other lords to think he was losing. By the time they finally saw the capital, more than half of his army was gone. When they arrived, they were shocked to see a whole new city sitting right next to the capital, and the walls looked way stronger than before. Suddenly, loud explosions went off. A dwarf girl named Donna, who is an expert with machines, started firing cannons from the walls. The soldiers had never seen anything like it and thought it was crazy powerful magic. Even more people ran away in fear. But Albel pushed the remaining men forward anyway. One of his top generals, a giant named Gayan who has unbelievable strength, smashed the main gate open with a huge club. But as soon as Albel and some of his men got inside, the gate was fixed instantly by magic, trapping the rest of the army outside. As they moved through the streets, more walls and cages popped up from the ground, splitting the army up even more. Soon, Albel only had 300 elite soldiers left. They finally reached the palace square, but it was another trap. The ground suddenly vanished and the soldiers fell into a deep hole. They lost their horses and had to fight on foot. Albel's top generals, like Maribura who uses earth magic, tried to fight back, but Luke's villagers were surprisingly strong. Villagers like Saren and Noel were holding their own against these famous warriors because of their special gear and boosted stats. Lord Albel was still a total monster though. He was knocking people around with massive shockwaves from his sword and heading straight for Luke to end him. Just as he was about to attack, Raoul jumped in to stop him. Raoul is Albel's other son and Luke's brother. He told his dad that he's hated him since he was a kid because Albel only cared about power and treated his family badly. Raoul was much stronger than before, but his father was still on another level. Albel started pushing Raoul back with a fierce attack, and Raoul was quickly reaching his limit. Raoul was fighting his father Edel, but the old man was way too strong. Even though they both had the Sword Saint gift, the age and experience gap was just too big. Raoul realized he couldn't win on his own, so he called out to his brother Luke for help. Luke had a special power to buff his allies, but they had to become part of his village first. Raoul hated Luke, but he hated his dad even more, so he agreed to join the village. Luke used his villager enhancement skill, and suddenly Raoul's power doubled. Luke threw Raoul a potion to heal his injury. With his strength boosted and his wounds gone, Raoul charged at his father. He was moving so fast that he was almost a blur. Their swords crashed with a loud metallic bang, and Edel was actually pushed back. The soldiers watching were shocked because the legendary Edel was finally being overwhelmed. While the fight was intense, a small man named Pippinella appeared out of nowhere. He was one of Edel's 4 top generals and an expert at sneaking around. He stabbed a knife into Luke's back, thinking he could stop the buff on Raoul. However, Luke didn't even react. It turned out the Luke standing there was just a body double. The knife and the poison did nothing. The village soldiers got angry and quickly jumped on Pippinella, taking him out of the fight. Edel's obsession with power came from a sad past. When he was only 8, his home was destroyed and his father was killed because they were weak. His mother told him that in this world, the strong take things and the weak lose them. From then on, Edel worked until he became the strongest sword saint and built a massive empire. He believed he had to control everything so he would never lose his home again. Back in the present, Raoul was finishing the fight. Edel was tired and bleeding, but he still tried to attack. His sword couldn't take the pressure anymore and snapped in half. Raoul didn't hesitate and landed a final blow, ending the battle. Edel collapsed, finally tasting defeat for the first time in his life. With the war over, Luke decided to move his entire village back to the wilderness. The king was grateful and asked Luke to stay at the palace as a high-ranking official, but Luke turned him down. He just wanted to be a simple village chief. He left a body double at the palace to help the king with work, while Raoul decided to stay behind to retrain the royal army. Even though Edel was supposed to be locked up, he managed to escape the dungeon with his 4 generals. He realized that ruling a country was too much work and didn't make him truly happy. He decided to leave the country to travel and focus only on his own strength as a warrior. His loyal generals chose to follow him, and they all disappeared into the distance. Because so many people from the capital had joined the village system, Luke's village level jumped to 11. He got millions of points and a new skill called teleportation. This allowed him to travel anywhere in his territory instantly. He tested it out by popping up in front of Mitchell, a former spy who was now working as a local official. Luke was finally back to his quiet life, but now he had the power to go anywhere in a heartbeat. Luke leaves Mitchell behind after her secret spying is revealed, but he lets her keep her job as a magistrate for now. He discovers his teleportation power has upgraded, allowing him to take others with him as long as they are touching. He tests this by instantly moving his friends Milia and Saren to Saren's family castle, which completely shocks her father. Back at the village, a level up unlocks advanced facilities like factories and a railway system. Luke builds a train station and tries to drive the new train. He accidentally starts it with Saren on board and panics when he can't find the brakes. Luckily, he figures out the controls just in time. Realizing a train network is too big for a small village to manage, Luke decides to offer the project to the king to help rebuild the country. He teleports the king and the princess to the new station for a test ride. The group is blown away as the train hits high speed, turning a journey that usually takes days into a quick 1-hour trip. They visit Luke's uncle, Hang, who is serving as a magistrate in a distant city. The king is so impressed that he agrees to let the government run the railway. To avoid accidents with people wandering onto the tracks, Luke plans to build the entire system in underground tunnels, using his body doubles to speed up the construction. Just as things settle down, a dangerous person arrives at the village gate. Luke and Saren rush there to find a 2-meter-tall giant with massive muscle. However, the stranger is dressed in a frilly pink princess outfit with ribbons and makeup. This is Gorshiana, also known as Gori-chan, who claims to be a girl on a mission to spread beauty. Despite the scary look and the guards being on edge, Gori-chan seems friendly and totally obsessed with fashion and looking good. A muscular person named Gori-chan arrived at the village gates, claiming to be a maiden on a mission to spread beauty across the world. When the guards laughed and called her a man, she lost her temper, cracking the ground with a single stomp. She got so close to one guard that he fainted after she gave him a kiss as a lesson. Luke, the village chief, decided to let her in despite the chaos. Gori-chan wanted to open a beauty salon, a concept totally new to this world. Luke used his special village building gift to create a pink salon building for her. Saren, who is very close to Luke, was jealous at first, but Gori-chan quickly won her over by promising to make her even more beautiful for Luke. The results were amazing. Saren came out with a new hairstyle and perfect makeup, looking much more beautiful than usual. When Luke complimented her, she turned bright red. Then Milia, another girl who likes Luke, got a makeover too. She went for a mature look with a bold dress. Both girls started fighting over Luke's attention, and Gori-chan jokingly suggested that Luke should just date both of them. The salon became a massive hit. To keep up with all the customers, Gori-chan hired a group of muscular men as apprentices. These guys wore heavy makeup and pink outfits, but they were actually very skilled at hair and makeup. Soon, the entire village was full of stylish, beautiful women. Even the refugees and poor villagers started looking like nobles because of the new fashion trend. The change was so big that it started affecting everyone. A warrior named Sirius was stunned to see how much his sister had changed. When he saw Philia, the girl he liked, looking extra beautiful after her salon visit, he actually fainted from the shock. Word of the village's success reached the royal capital. A wealthy merchant named Shuval heard that this wilderness town was becoming the best place to live. He took his wife there on the new high-speed train, thinking his wife would be the most beautiful person in such a remote place. However, when they arrived, he was shocked to see that even the random women on the street looked better than his wife. His wife immediately rushed to Gori-chan's salon to get her own makeover. Meanwhile, while expanding the underground railway near the capital, Luke discovered ancient ruins. His brother Raoul, who is now a high-ranking general for the king, wanted to explore them. Luke put together a team to check out the ruins, but a big argument broke out between Saren and Raoul. Both of them wanted to be the leader of the mission, and Luke had to step in to stop them from fighting before they even started the journey. Luke gets picked as the leader of the exploration team because everyone trusts him. Even though he's a bit nervous about the job, it's better than letting Raoul and Saren keep arguing. Luke is actually using a body double for this mission, so his real body is safe back home while his mind controls the fake one. The team is pretty big, including Alec, who is a very experienced adventurer, and Kamuru, a guy who is great at finding his way through mazes. They enter the dark ruins through a secret spot under the city. Since it's pitch black, guy who knows light magic uses his staff to show the way. It doesn't take long for skeletons to show up. Noel blocks them with his shield and Alex smashes them with his big sword. Hazina, the team's fire user, burns a whole group of them at once. Even Marin, a beastman girl with dog ears who works for Raoul, helps out with her spear. As they go deeper, they hit a locked metal fence with a weird puzzle. Kamuru thinks it's going to be a huge hassle to solve, but Luke just uses his teleport power to move everyone to the other side. It feels like cheating, but it saves them a lot of work. The monsters get much stronger as they go down. They run into living armor, which is basically empty suits of armor moved by ghosts. Physical hits don't do much, but Guy uses a special cleaning spell to break them apart. Raoul gets impatient and walks into a huge room filled with stone coffins. Suddenly, over 100 mummies jump out and trap everyone inside. Raoul doesn't care and jumps right into the fight. Luke helps by making a giant rock monster called a golem, and Philia climbs on its shoulder to shoot magic arrows. Even though there are so many mummies, the team is so strong that they finish them all off quickly. After the fight, Luke decides it's time for a break. He uses his powers to build a whole house right there in the ruins so everyone can relax. He even teleports back to the village to get fancy lunch boxes from a famous chef named Coke. Everyone is shocked by how good the food tastes. They even get to use a clean bathroom and wash their hands, which makes the whole trip feel more like a vacation than a scary mission. Finally, they reach a room filled with gold and jewels. It looks like the tomb of an old king. In the middle, there is a giant golden coffin. Suddenly, a creepy voice tells them to leave, and a skeleton wearing a crown comes out of the box. This isn't a normal monster. It's a powerful king of the dead, and he is very angry that people are messing with his grave. Raoul ignores the warning from Filia and rushes straight at the white. The undead boss uses shadow magic to freeze Raoul in his tracks and tries to blast him with black flame. Noel jumps in with his high-quality shield to take the hit, but the magic is so strong that the shield starts to fall apart. Guy, the group's priest, quickly uses purification magic to free Raoul from the shadow spell. The white then summons 10 headless knights called Dullahans to protect him. These knights are fast and strong, making it hard for the team to get close. Raoul and Guy manage to take one down, but the white just summons a new one immediately. Realizing they need a different plan, Luke creates a stone golem to charge at the boss. The white tries to freeze the golem, but the magic doesn't work on objects. As the golem gets close, the white teleports a few meters away to stay safe. Luke sees his chance, grabs Guy, and teleports them both right behind the boss. Guy hits the white's head with his staff, using light magic to turn the undead king into ashes. Once the boss is gone, all the summoned knights disappear. On their way out of the ruins, Luke finds a hidden room. Inside, a woman named Miranda is chained to a pillar. She looks like she is just sleeping, but Raoul's sword can't even scratch the magic chains holding her. Luke touches her arm and teleports her away from the pillar. This breaks the seal, and Miranda finally wakes up. At first, she lets out a scary amount of power that terrifies everyone, but the mood changes fast when they realize she is actually just a lazy drunk. Miranda follows Luke back to his village and moves into his house. She spends her days drinking beer and sleeping, claiming she is a legendary sage from the past. She says she worked too hard back then and got tired of people using her, so she sealed herself away to sleep forever. Since Luke woke her up, she thinks it's his job to feed her for free. Luke tries to drop her off in a faraway field to get rid of her, but she just teleports back to his house instantly. Eventually, Luke's maid Milia takes over and handles the lazy sage with a scary smile. Meanwhile, a young villager named Sirius is struggling. He already had a crush on Filia, but now he is confused because he thinks the new woman, Miranda, is also very attractive. Even though she is a mess, her beauty has caused a lot of trouble for the young guy's heart. Sirius is a young guy living his second life in a fantasy world, and lately, he has been hitting a big growth spurt. Even though he is getting taller, his mind is mostly stuck on his crushes. He really likes beautiful older women, especially Filia, a 100-year-old elf warrior, and Miranda, a lazy mage who spends her days drinking. Luke, the young village chief, warns Sirius that falling for a lazy person like Miranda is a bad idea, but Sirius is determined to help her change her ways. While Sirius is busy with his feelings, Luke's maid Milia is plotting something strange. She is obsessed with Luke staying small and cute, and she hates that he is growing up. She corners Miranda and makes a deal. If Miranda uses her magic to stop Luke from growing any taller, Milia will take care of all of Miranda's cleaning and bring her food and drinks. Miranda finds the maid pretty scary, so she agrees to the deal just to keep her life easy. As the village grows to over 20,000 people, a helpful villager named Burlet suggests holding an event to help everyone get to know each other. Luke thinks it is a great idea and decides to host a massive martial arts tournament. Using his special building powers, Luke creates a giant coliseum that can hold 50,000 people. The arena is high-tech, with special features that prevent people from getting badly hurt and a hospital nearby to heal any injuries instantly. The hype for the tournament goes through the roof when the prize is announced. The winner gets one wish granted by the village chief. Everyone from expert warriors to random villagers signs up. Strong fighters like Saren, who is Sirius's sister and a top-tier warrior, and Filia the elf are the clear favorites. Even a giant, tough person named Gorichan joins the mix, making the competition look really scary. The qualifiers start with over 1,000 participants fighting in underground arenas. Most people have been training hard at the village gym, so the fights are high-level. One guy named Manta, who used to be a local troublemaker, tries to show off, but gets knocked out in one hit because he didn't train seriously. Meanwhile, Saren and Filia easily crush their opponents and move to the main stage. Sirius also wins his matches, hoping to finally prove he is stronger than his sister. With the top 32 fighters decided, the whole village is buzzing to see who will win the ultimate prize. The village tournament finally kicked off and the atmosphere was electric. Luke was shocked to see over 30,000 people in the stands, including the king and the princess who traveled from the capital just to watch. The princess even sat right next to Luke, which made his assistant, Milia, pretty annoyed. The first round was full of action. Philia, a skilled elf archer with wind powers, went up against Hazina, a fire mage. It was a flashy battle of arrows and fireballs, but Philia used her speed to stay ahead and eventually took Hazina down. Even Raoul, a powerful warrior from the capital, showed up to watch. He was a bit salty that he wasn't allowed to join the fight, but he settled in to see the show. The real highlight was Gori-chan, a super muscular woman with a bubbly personality but terrifying power. She faced Land, one of the best spear users in the village. Land was fast, but Gori-chan was on another level. She caught his spear tips with her bare hands and revealed her secret gift. She was a fist saint, a master of hand-to-hand combat. She ended the match by casually picking Land up and tossing him out of the ring like he weighed nothing. As the second round began, the matches got even more intense. Noel, a young guy who fights only with a massive shield, faced off against Barlett. Barlett tried to play it smart by running around the ring to tire Noel out. It almost worked, but Noel surprised everyone with a lightning-fast move and slammed Barlett out of the ring. Later, a dwarf warrior named Banba fought Doriel, a giant former bandit leader. Both were using massive, heavy weapons. They hit each other so hard that their weapons actually shattered into pieces. Instead of giving up, Doriel just used his fists and punched Banba out to claim the win. By the end of the day, only 8 fighters remained, including the fan favorites like Saren and Sirius. The village was buzzing with excitement, and even the experienced adventurers were starting to feel nervous about facing Gori-chan. With the quarterfinals set for the next day, everyone was wondering who would eventually come out on top. The quarterfinals began with a massive crowd and high energy. The first match featured Philia, a skilled archer, against Noel, a strong shield user. Philia fired wind-powered arrows so fast they were almost invisible. They hit Noel's mithril shield with enough power to get stuck, but they couldn't break through. Philia then fired 10 arrows at once from different directions. Noel used a move called Lure Shield, which pulled all the arrows toward his shield like a magnet. While Philia was shocked, Noel threw his entire shield at her. The heavy hit sent her flying out of the ring, and Noel moved to the semi-final. The second match was between Saren, a fast twin-sword fighter, and Guy, a big adventurer who used magic to boost his strength. Guy used a light spell to blind Saren and then attacked with his club. Even though she couldn't see, Saren used her instincts to block the attack. She had memorized Guy's movements and predicted his path. Once her vision returned, she quickly took him down with a slash. Saren won and teased that she would want a special favor if she became the champion. Next, Gori-chan, a muscular woman with insane strength, faced Alec. Alec was terrified because Gori-chan had a weird crush on him. He attacked with his greatsword, but Gori-chan blocked the heavy blade with her bare fists. She used her pure energy to make her skin as hard as a hammer. She eventually grabbed Alec's sword, threw it away, and landed a series of heavy punches. Alec was sent flying out of the ring, and Gori-chan moved on to the next round. The last quarterfinal was between Doriel, a tough axe user, and Sirius, Saren's agile younger brother. Doriel used a secret weapon, an axe attached to a chain. He spun it around like a propeller, making it impossible for anyone to get close. However, Sirius used his wind powers to leap through the air and landed a powerful dropkick on Doriel's head. Sirius was declared the winner. Luke, the village chief, felt worried about the upcoming matches. He didn't want Saren or Gori-chan to win because their demands might be trouble. He felt conflicted about being fair, but he eventually decided to use his villager enhancement skill to secretly boost Noel's power for the semi-final against Saren. During the match, Noel was much faster than usual, which surprised everyone. To counter him, Saren used her magic to turn the entire ring into a sheet of ice. Noel couldn't keep his balance on the slippery floor and kept falling. Saren then froze his legs to the ground so he couldn't move. Noel threw his shield as a last resort, but Saren glided across the ice and dodged it easily. Noel lost, and Saren moved to the final. The final hope to stop the girls was Sirius. He faced Gori-chan in the next semi-final. Luke secretly boosted Sirius's speed to give him a chance. Gori-chan stood her ground, ready to take any hit, but Sirius moved so fast that he managed to land a quick strike on her tough body before she could even react. Sirius was up against Gori-chan, a woman with a body as hard as iron. He was moving fast and hitting her constantly, but his attacks were barely leaving a scratch. Gori-chan actually seemed to enjoy the pain, which was pretty weird. Eventually, she let out a massive roar. Her muscles grew even bigger, and she started firing energy bullets from her fists like a cannon. Sirius couldn't dodge the rapid-fire attacks and got knocked out of the ring. This meant Gori-chan was moving on to the finals. Luke, the village chief, was getting worried. The final match was going to be Saren versus Gori-chan. Gori-chan told Luke that if she won, she wanted a special favor from him, which made him really nervous. On the other side, Saren was also fired up and ready to win. When the final match started, Saren did something nobody expected. She threw away her sword. She had realized that Gori-chan gets stronger every time she takes a hit. Saren's plan was to use ice magic to freeze the ring and Gori-chan's legs instead of attacking her directly. It was working well, and Gori-chan was getting stuck in the cold. But Gori-chan had a crazy countermove. Since Saren wouldn't hit her, Gori-chan started punching herself to get her energy up. The crowd was totally weirded out, but the self-attacks gave her the power boost she needed. Her body heat rose, the ice cracked, and she launched a huge wave of energy attacks at Saren. Luke saw that Saren was about to lose, so he secretly used his special villager buff to increase her power 10 times over. With this massive boost, Saren moved with insane speed, dodged every single attack, and managed to freeze Gori-chan into a solid block of ice. Even though the crowd cheered for Saren's win, she wasn't happy. She realized Luke had interfered with his powers and felt the victory wasn't fair. Saren ended up forfeiting the match, making Gori-chan the official winner of the tournament. Saren was pretty mad at Luke for messing with her fight. After the event, the king was so impressed that he agreed to host future tournaments for the whole kingdom. Then came the time for Gori-chan to claim her prize. Instead of asking for something normal, she forced Luke to cross-dress. She took him to a salon, put him in makeup, a wig, and a girl's outfit. When Luke finally stepped out, he looked like a completely different person, a very beautiful girl. The villagers were shocked, and some even joked that he looked better this way. To make things worse, Saren decided that as punishment for interfering in her match, Luke had to stay in that girl's outfit for an entire month. Luke was left totally embarrassed, while everyone else laughed at his situation. Luke was currently cross-dressing for a martial arts tournament, and his mentor Miranda couldn't stop laughing at him. Miranda, a powerful woman known as the Twilight Sage, was so drunk and found the outfit so funny that she actually got sick in the bathroom. She had been watching Luke's matches from her room window using her magically enhanced vision. Even though she was a mess, she clearly enjoyed the show. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, a teenage demon leader named Raoul was busy pushing the kingdom's soldiers to their breaking point. Raoul was in charge of strengthening the army, and he was using special facilities Luke had built. These buildings had magical powers that helped soldiers improve much faster than usual. Raoul decided he needed more of these buildings, so he headed to the royal palace to find Luke. When Raoul entered the room, he didn't find Luke. Instead, he saw a beautiful girl he had never met before. After a moment of confusion, he realized this was actually Luke's body double, who was also cross-dressing because the real Luke was doing it. Raoul was stunned by how good the double looked, even questioning if the brothers were actually girls because the look suited them way too well. Soon after, Princess Darania, who has a massive crush on Luke, came to visit. She immediately recognized the body double by his scent and absolutely loved the cross-dressing look. She got way too excited and tried to get uncomfortably close to the double, who had to push her away. The real Luke, hearing about this through a mental link, was embarrassed but realized the people in the village actually wanted him to keep the outfit on because it was so popular. Later, Luke met with Duke Kayan, an elderly ruler from the freezing northern lands. Luke had used his powers to build a massive underground railway system for the Duke. This was a huge deal because the north is usually blocked by heavy snow, but these trains could move people and goods in just a few hours regardless of the weather. To top it off, Luke shocked the Duke by using teleportation to send him back to the castle instantly. While they were together, the Duke showed Luke a prisoner, a young beastman girl named Lala who had been caught stealing food. The Duke explained that beastmen live in the harsh, starving lands further north and often raid human villages to survive. This has caused a long history of hatred between the two races. Luke decided to step in and went to the dungeon as his body double. Using his building powers, he created a secret staircase inside the cell and offered to help Lala escape. He told her he didn't want to fight. He wanted to meet her people and find a way to stop the raiding by helping them grow their own food. Lala was suspicious but had no choice, so she followed him. Luke used his special road ability to create a path that made them move at super speeds. In just a few hours, they crossed the border and reached the frozen, poor lands where Lala's tribe lived. The area was already covered in snow, showing just how hard it was for her people to survive in such a place. Lala returned to her village, a place surrounded by dirt walls and filled with tents. The other beastfolk were shocked, wondering how she escaped humans and who the human girl with her was. They noticed Luke, who had no animal ears, and panicked. Lala led Luke to her older sister Lily, who was the boss of the village. Lily, a strong and serious woman, immediately kicked Lala for getting caught by humans. Lily then turned her attention to Luke, questioning why a human was there. Lala quickly explained that Luke saved her from prison. Lily was suspicious, thinking Luke might be a spy, but admitted Luke didn't smell like bad news. Luke introduced himself, and Lily warned him that their cat tribe village was only for women. Men were usually put down if they entered without permission, except during special times. Luke, secretly a man, felt a cold sweat knowing he had to keep his disguise. To change the subject, Luke asked about their crop problem. Lily explained they were struggling because their usual foraging spots had too many traps. Luke offered to help them grow their own food. He convinced Lily to let him use a small piece of land in the settlement. Using his special skill, Luke instantly transformed the grassy patch into rich, fertile farmland. Lily was stunned. Luke then planted seeds with Lala's help, boosting how fast they could work. He told them the crops would be ready to pick in just 3 days. 3 days later, the small field was full of huge, healthy crops. Lily, still doubtful, bit into a bright red tomato and was amazed. It was incredibly sweet and fresh, unlike anything she'd ever tasted. Other beastfolk quickly rushed over, grabbing raw vegetables and cheering. Luke then built an outdoor kitchen, which everyone loved for making cooking easier and the food even tastier. The village's food problems were solved. However, Luke noticed a strong smell in the village. Lala and Lily also had a noticeable odor. Since they just collected rainwater and drank animal milk, they didn't really wash, so Luke built a public bath. The beastfolk didn't even know what a bath was. Luke pushed Lala in first. She came out clean and excited, saying the warm, clean water felt amazing. Soon, everyone else rushed to try it. Next, Luke built public restrooms complete with automatic cleaning and deodorizing. The villagers were amazed by the clean toilets and the flushing water. Luke tried to explain how to use them, but he had to quickly run away when Lala tried to take off her clothes right there, not understanding privacy. The village became super clean, and everyone started smelling fresh from using the soap. Luke built a small house for himself, but his body was a double, and he often switched his mind back to his main body to avoid awkward situations, especially when Lala kept inviting him to bathe with her. One day, Lala suggested renovating the public bath. Luke agreed, thinking it was a real renovation. But when they got inside, Lala suddenly pushed Luke into the hot water. She admitted it was a trick because he always refused to bathe with her. Lala quickly pulled off his clothes. Luke, now naked, tried hard to cover himself, especially when Lala said, "We're women, so don't be shy." He couldn't tell her he was a man. Then Lily also walked in, already naked, making Luke even more embarrassed. He quickly switched his mind back to his main body, leaving his double to deal with the awkward situation. Later that day, a messenger from a male beastfolk group arrived. Lily, the boss, sighed, expecting the usual talk about uniting their herds, which she always refused. The male leader, Gaga, looked like a strong tiger man. He was amazed by how clean the female village was and how healthy everyone looked. Gaga then boldly suggested they should mate in the next season to have strong kids, but Lily just spat, showing her disgust. Lala whispered that Lily always hated men and never mated. Gaga tried to convince Lily to unite, promising the men would gather all the food so the women wouldn't have to risk stealing crops. He even tried to use Lala's past capture to persuade her. But Lily just laughed, calling Lala into the tent and showing Gaga that Lala was back and safe. Lily then firmly refused Gaga's offer, saying they no longer needed to worry about food. She told Gaga to leave, threatening to make sure he couldn't have kids if he didn't. Confused and annoyed, Gaga and his men left, wondering what secret Lily had that made her village so prosperous and clean. Gaga, the leader of the male cat tribe, met a female spy from the village near some rocks. This woman was secretly in love with Gaga, so she told him everything about the mysterious human girl who had brought plenty of food and built strong walls for the village. Gaga was jealous of how well the women were living while his men were starving. He decided to stop negotiating and planned to take the village by force. To make sure he won, he even teamed up with the dog tribe. Back at the village, the boss Lily got the news that the men were attacking. She wasn't too worried at first because her female warriors were just as fast and strong as the men. However, she was shocked to see the dog tribe helping Gaga. The leader of the dog tribe, a sharp-eyed man named Bull, only joined because his people were dying of hunger. He hoped to capture the human girl, who was actually Luke in disguise, to save his tribe from famine. As the battle started, the men tried to leap over the stone walls using each other as stepping stones. Luke, using his special powers, instantly made the walls 2 meters taller. The attackers couldn't stop in time and crashed face-first into the stones, knocking themselves out. While the men were confused, the village women started throwing heavy rocks from above, causing a lot of pain and stopping the charge. Luke then used a secret underground passage to help Lily and her warriors get behind the enemy. Gaga's group was suddenly trapped from both sides. Luke used his teleporting powers to keep popping up behind Gaga, making him swing at thin air until he was completely exhausted. With their leaders captured and their plan failing, the rest of the men gave up. Instead of being cruel, Luke used magic potions to heal everyone's wounds. Lily decided to be fair but firm. She made a deal with Bull and the dog tribe. Luke promised to build them food fields and clean baths so they wouldn't need to raid anyone ever again. For the cat tribe men, Lily kicked Gaga out of power and made her younger brother, Dada, the new boss. Dada was much smarter and calmer than Gaga, making him a better leader for the future. Soon, Luke visited all the tribes and built fields that could grow crops in just 3 days. He also set up toilets and baths to fix their hygiene problem. Word spread to the human lands, and Duke Cain was confused. He couldn't understand why the Beastmen had suddenly stopped attacking his territory. He heard rumors about a girl with magic powers helping them, but he didn't realize it was actually Luke. Finally, Luke's month of punishment came to an end. He was so happy to stop pretending to be a girl. He threw away the dress, took off the wig, and cleaned off the makeup. He was glad to be a man again, but as he looked in the mirror, he realized he still looked a bit too pretty, which made him feel a little awkward about his own face. Luke finally stopped dressing like a girl after a month. Milia and Saren were pretty sad about it because he looked so natural, but Luke was done with that life. However, he realized he had a problem. The Beastmen village doesn't allow men, and he had already spent a lot of time there as a girl. To avoid a huge mess, he decided to keep one of his magical body doubles in girl mode just for them. Around the village, things were moving fast, but Luke's height wasn't. He was stressed because he hadn't grown at all in a year. While he worried about being short, the village was thriving. They had underground trains now, so even the winter couldn't stop them. It had been 2 years since he started the village, and after all the drama with his family, he just wanted some rest. But then, the king sent an urgent message. A neighboring country called Barst was invading from the south with 50,000 soldiers. The local leader, Duke Talister, was in big trouble because he was totally outnumbered. Luke and his friend Raoul went down to help, even though the Duke didn't think a kid could do much in a real war. Luke didn't feel like having a long, messy battle, so he just used his powers to change the landscape. He built a giant wall 20 meters high that stretched as far as the eye could see. He even added special roads and bridges for his own team to move around. The Duke was completely shocked, and word started spreading among the soldiers about how Luke was a total legend who built the desert village and the national railway. On the other side, the Barst commander saw the wall pop out of the ground and almost fell off his horse. When his spies told him the wall blocked the entire border, he realized they were cooked. There was no way to beat someone who could build a massive fortress in seconds. The whole enemy army gave up and went home without even trying to fight. Luke headed back to the palace, told the king the job was done, and went home to his village. Luke had just saved the kingdom from a massive crisis by building a giant wall, and the king was absolutely shocked. While the king wanted to reward him, Luke just wanted a quiet life. As soon as the king mentioned his daughter, Luke felt a bad vibe and teleported back to his village immediately. Meanwhile, a woman named Maria, who was a loyal worker for the country's biggest church, was sent on a secret mission. Her boss told her that Luke's village had a fake church that wasn't following the rules. Maria arrived and found Milia, Luke's maid, leading a secret meeting where everyone was praising Luke like a god. At first, Maria thought this was evil, but then she noticed something. She realized her own church was greedy and only helped rich people who gave them money. In contrast, Luke's village helped everyone for free and actually cared about the poor. Maria had a total change of heart and became a huge fan of Luke, even staying in the village to serve him. Back at the main church, the leader, a lazy and greedy man named Aldera, was furious because his spies weren't returning. He sent his right-hand man, a tough priest named Cain, along with a group of elite knights to crush the village. Cain was an arrogant guy who used to punish anyone the church didn't like. When Cain arrived at the village, he acted like a bully, but Milia wasn't scared at all. When Cain ordered his knights to attack, the villagers stepped up. Even though they looked like normal people, they were actually super strong and had high-quality gear. They easily took down the knights and threw Cain into a cell. Milia mocked Cain for being a fake priest who only cared about meat and money. Then, she brought in a scary old woman named Nema to fix Cain's bad attitude. Nema's training was painful and intense, but it worked. After the rehabilitation was over, Cain went back to the main church to see Aldera. The fat church leader was waiting for a report of victory, but Cain looked like a completely different person. He didn't have his old arrogance anymore. Instead of reporting a successful mission, Cain looked at his boss and told him that the village wasn't the problem, the church was. He started explaining that Luke was the true leader they should all be following, leaving the church leader completely confused and angry. Cain returned to the church leader, Aldera, and told him that the village was totally clean and followed all the rules. Aldera was a greedy man who only cared about money, so when he heard the village wanted to make a huge donation, he got really excited, but the peace didn't last long. A priest rushed into the room shouting that the church was under attack. Before Aldera could even finish his meal, a girl named Milia walked in. She was a maid who also worked as a priest for Luke, the leader of the desert village. Aldera called for his holy knights to protect him, but they just stood there and didn't move. Then Cain showed up, but he wasn't on Aldera's side anymore. He had been completely changed by Milia's special village potion, and now believed that Luke was the only real savior. The knights, who were also changed, grabbed Aldera and dragged him down to a secret underground room for some special training. A week later, Aldera was a completely different person. He used to be very fat and mean, but now he was thin and super polite. He had been educated to follow Luke with total loyalty. He even went to see King Darius and apologized for being a jerk in the past. To everyone's shock, he announced that the church would stop charging people for blessings. Now even poor people could get blessed for free, making the king realize that the church had truly changed. Back in the village, Milia told Luke that their church was finally official and no longer a secret. Luke was busy leveling up his village. He had registered over 1 million people as villagers, which pushed the village to level 12. This gave him new things to build, like a cemetery that keeps monsters away, an amusement park, and a massive cathedral. Luke built the cathedral on a high hill overlooking the village. It was huge and looked more like a palace than a church, with beautiful glass windows and tall towers. Milia was so happy that she even wanted to replace the god statue inside with a statue of Luke. Meanwhile, an official named Gririo from a neighboring kingdom was traveling to meet the king. He saw the giant wall Luke had built and was shocked. He couldn't believe a wall that big could just appear out of nowhere, and he was even more impressed by how smooth and nice the roads were in Luke's territory. The envoy arrived at the massive wall and was shocked by how clean the city looked. Even though there was a long war, the people looked healthy and happy. He met Duke Talister, the powerful lord of the area, to apologize for the failed invasion. The envoy admitted his country was now scared and wanted to make peace. The Duke wasn't interested in revenge and offered to take the envoy to see the king. Instead of a long journey, the Duke led them to a basement where a train sat on tracks. This railway was a fast-moving box that carried them to the capital in just 3 hours. When they arrived, the envoy found the king and the Duke playing on a merry-go-round like little kids. The envoy joined the fun and realized this country was way too rich and powerful to mess with. They had so much money and land that they could build giant parks just for fun. Behind the scenes, Luke was the one building everything. He used 50 body doubles and a special copy and paste skill to build amusement parks all over the kingdom. He even tried a space-themed park, but the locals didn't really understand what a rocket was. Back at Luke's village, a huge flying monster called a wyvern attacked. It tried to snatch a cow from the pasture, but the village cows were so big they just fought back and knocked the monster down. The wyvern tried to fly away, but Luke wasn't letting it go. He used his special skill to lift a section of the castle wall into the air. He flew the wall right up to the wyvern so Philia, the elf archer, could get a clear shot. She hit its wing and the monster crashed to the ground. The villagers turned the wyvern into a giant barbecue. The meat was so delicious that everyone wanted more. Since these monsters lived on high, snowy mountains that were impossible to climb, Luke came up with a plan. He used his power to lift a whole park facility into the sky, turning it into a floating base. Now, the hunters had a way to fly right up to the mountain peaks to hunt more monsters easily. Luke is a village chief who has a special power to build and change structures. He turns a regular park into a flying platform to hunt wyverns in a dangerous mountain range. He is joined by a hunting team led by Saren, an expert elf archer named Philia, and a super strong hairdresser named Gori-chan, who has the power of a fist-sacred technique. The team spots a wyvern, and Luke uses his power to slam the flying park into the creature. Once it hits the ground, the hunters jump out to finish it off. They aren't scared at all. They just see the wyvern as delicious meat. Gori-chan shows off her crazy strength by grabbing a giant wyvern by its jaw and throwing it across the field like it's nothing. As they hunt more wyverns, a massive dragon suddenly appears. It is much faster and stronger than the wyverns they fought earlier. It tries to ram the park, but Luke uses his special building skill to literally fold the floating ground in half. The dragon gets caught between the 2 layers of earth like a giant sandwich. The hunters prepare to kill it for food, but then they hear a voice in their heads. The dragon starts talking to them using telepathy. It tries to act tough, calling itself an ancient dragon, but it quickly realizes these people actually plan to eat it. It starts begging for its life, but the hunters are still focused on how good dragon meat might taste. The dragon even tries to breathe fire, but Luke blocks it by building a quick wall of dirt. In a final effort to survive, the dragon uses magic to shrink its body. It transforms into a small, cute human girl with tiny horns and a tail. Seeing a little girl instead of a monster, the hunters lose their appetite. They decide they can't eat something that looks so innocent and agree to spare her life. Luke introduces himself as the leader of the group. The little dragon girl, a powerful being who looks like a small child, acts surprised because Luke is so tiny. She quickly tries to stay polite, but deep down, she's laughing at how easy it is to trick humans by acting cute. Luke apologizes for entering her territory and hunting the wyverns she usually eats. The dragon girl keeps up her act, pretending to be worried so that Luke feels even more guilty. She explains that her nest is nearby and the wyverns were her main food source. Luke feels bad and promises they won't overhunt the area or bother her again. The girl is happy that her plan is working and gets ready to head back to her nest. However, before she can leave, Luke stops her. He wants to make up for the trouble they caused, so he invites her back to the village. He offers to cook the wyvern meat they caught and share a big meal with her as a peace offer.